Someone make it make sense.
Probably a couple.
Hello, hello. How's everybody doing today? Hope y'all are having a good weekend so far. So we are back for more with BK as per usual. We do also have some new documents for Donna Adelson. So I anticipate we will be covering those tonight. The first is dealing with her investigator and the conflicts of interest, which have been ongoing in that case. And the second is, guess what? Wendy's book. Another motion in limine from Donna's defense team trying to keep Wendy's book out of her trial. So I'm thinking what we will do tonight is cover those and then probably redirect into more Murdoch. So we have that to look forward to as well. So shout out to Kane. Happy to see you. Happy to see you also, Candace. And Robert Lessie is here. Awesome. By the way, Mr. Lessie, we do have a new command for you here, as well as some new clips. So the new Alessi command is this one. I am Mr. Penetrometer, and I like my science hard. I like it hard as a rock, and I can make it quick. And so to that end, let's also take a look at some of these new clips that we have here, which I don't think are actually of you, Mr. Alessi, but we do have a couple good ones here. So
I don't have an answer to that. Mr. Brennan said, what if I called a Massachusetts state police officer to say that this was the best investigation ever? I have 2 words. Do it.
Your Honor, I can't do this in 2 minutes.
That's what she said. By the way, guys, if you haven't seen it, I do have a video. It's just like a video. It is the entrance when all the defense team comes into the Turtle Boy portion of the hearing, and with the music, Damn It Feels Good to Be a Gangster. So definitely check that out if you haven't seen it already. It's pretty epic, if I do say so myself. But shout out to Candace, shout out to Iowa, shout out to Kane, welcoming all you guys on in. Everybody's got their custom commands, which we love. And happy that all of you guys are here. Happy Saturday indeed. And Mr. Lessie approves of the new command, which we love. Excellent. Love it. Shout out to Meg. Excellent. So Mr. Lessie, I know you've got a lot on your plate right now, but are you also following what's going on in Idaho here with Bryan Kohberger? Let us know. Are you also following when you have a spare second, Donna Adelson at all? And from what we can tell, you are definitely a speed reader. So I would imagine that does contribute to how efficient you are. So you're not. Okay. So do you know, are we needing to get you caught up to speed here about what's going on in Idaho? Let us know. And I'm sure people in the chat will also be of some assistance. So we got a quadruple homicide going on. Yeah, we figured as much. We figured as much. Making your way through all those the expert witness reports and what was it, Dr. Crosby's, whatever the fuck it was with him. Twiz is awake. I just talked to him on the phone, unless he fell asleep in like the past 20 minutes. So Twiz should be here. Trying to fit it right. Yeah, and then the 90 seconds was also epic. It's Crosby, Meg. He's been henceforth called Dr. Crosby ever since, I forget. Was it you, Mr. Alessi, who called him Dr. Crosby? Might have been Breenan. Catch you up. All right, will do. All right. So November 13th, 2022, you had 4 college kids in Moscow, Idaho, go to University of Idaho, and they were all in the same house. 6 people lived in that house. And so or I guess 5 people lived in that house. So the 4 that were killed, it was 3 people who lived in the house plus the boyfriend of one of the girls. So it was 3 girls, 1 boy. And the state's theory of the case is that an assailant came in with a K-bar knife and stabbed the 4 people, 3 girls and 1 boy, stabbed them all to death in a very short time frame, probably 13 to 14 minutes, and left 2 survivors, as in the 2 surviving roommates. And they used IgG, quote unquote, to find a suspect right off the bat. It was one of the first things that they did, which led them to a suspect named Bryan Kohberger. And other than that, what did they have? Well, they've got this Elantra footage, or suspect vehicle 1, that is very questionable. And then they've got, what do they have? Well, they ended up having DNA on the knife sheath. Okay, so the knife sheath was left behind, and there's DNA on the knife sheath. And that is the only DNA that matches the defendant at all. That's it, on the button snap of the knife sheath. And there's no DNA anywhere else of the defendant. There are some unknown male DNAs. There's a lot of questions. And he's got public defenders, and they are awesome. They're no, great. I love these questions, you guys. I love it when somebody knows nothing. This is awesome. Knows nothing about this case. The 2 survivors had no injuries. So one of the survivors, surviving roommates, she says that she saw somebody walking by wearing all black and had a mask on and saw bushy eyebrows, which we're going to read another bushy eyebrows filing today, actually. And that's it. And she didn't say anything about the bushy eyebrows until she'd been interviewed several times. And they actually relied upon that testimony, the bushy eyebrows, for the PCA. And it seems to be a big part of their case for trying to identify the defendant, if you can believe it, and also prove their timeline as to when the murders happened. Now, here's the other interesting thing. 911 was not called until the next day at, what was it, 11:56 or something a.m. And in the interim, there was lots of activity. And we're going to actually review some of this too, because I've had a chance to kind of think about it since the last time we covered it. So let me pull this up. This is actually a good way to segue into this by getting Mr. Lessie all caught up to speed. So let me pull that up. Okay, this will be great. So this will be good review for everybody, but also for anyone who is less familiar. Okay, so let me share this to you guys. Let's just do this real quick. I just have to unshare, reshare. Okay. And Mr. Leslie says, I would really question the 2 survivors. Yep, you better believe it. That is literally what is going to happen. So, okay. So it is the state's theory of the case that the homicides happened around 4 a.m., really more like 4:04-ish. Okay, between like 4:04 and like 4:20. Okay, so these are the 2 surviving roommates. Well, okay, hold on. DM and BF are the 2 surviving roommates. DM, Dylan, is the one who says she saw the intruder or whatever, okay? So these text messages that are highlighted were not included in the state's filing, but were included in the defense filing. So no one is answering. I'm really confused. Those are the 2 surviving roommates, okay? But this is the important time frame, right? So let me back up a second. So 419, 420, right? So according to the state's theory of the case, the intruder would have probably just been leaving the house, right? According to the state's theory. Now, no one, the roommate, Dylan, that saw the intruder did not see him leave. She just saw him walking in a direction that could be towards a sliding door. So what's happening in here, right, is Bethany, BF, one of the surviving roommates, calls Dylan, right? Then Dylan calls these other roommates. Now, these are the victims, right? Xana, Kaylee. So then Dylan and Bethany talk on the phone again. Remember, they're supposedly in the house, have just seen this intruder. They're calling, in other words, they're calling the victims. And then here we have Dylan to Bethany, again, the 2 surviving roommates. No one is answering. I'm really confused right now. And then a text to Kaylee. Kaylee, what's going on? Of course, there's no answer. Then BF, Bethany, one of the surviving roommates again, sends an outgoing message through Snapchat. And then, yeah, dude, what the fuck? And then Bethany says to Dylan, Xana was wearing all black. Dylan says, I'm freaking out right now. No, it's like a ski mask almost. And then Bethany says, shut the fuck up. And then Dylan says, like he had something over his head and mouth. Of course, there's a lot of typos. I should add, they're both really drunk as well. They're both really drunk. One one of the many issues, right? Dylan it seems like she was like pretty much blackout drunk, and she even admits as much. Dylan says to Bethany, I'm not kidding. I am so freaked out. Bethany says, so am I. Dylan says, my phone is going to die. Fuck. And then, come to my room, run down here. And now Dylan calls EC. EC is Ethan. That's the male victim who didn't live there, who was there because he was Xana's boyfriend. And then this, I'm sure was supposed to say, I'm scared though. And then Bethany says, yeah, but I know, but it's better than being alone. Then Dylan has some more outgoing. So presumably, we don't know for sure. Presumably she goes to Bethany's room at this juncture, right? And so they're still calling the roommates, many calls to the roommates. Of course, there's no answer. Please answer. Bethany's on Snapchat, Instagram, right? Now Bethany calls her dad. You can see all these are highlighted because they weren't in the state's filing. But all this activity, right? Then at 8 in the morning, right? Between 8 a.m. and 10 a.m., Dylan's on Instagram. Bethany's taking photos. We've got Instagram. We've got Indeed. Now, there was a comment in the other live stream where we initially covered this document that was really a good thought here as far as Indeed. And I just wanted to point this out that shout out to whoever this was. I can't recall because I don't think they're usually in the live chat. But the suggestion was that potentially could Dylan have clicked on the wrong app? Because if you have all the apps on your phone and you have an app for Instagram and an app for Indeed, and they both start with IN, and she'd been on Instagram, did she accidentally click on Indeed? Maybe. We don't know. But it was a good thought because they'd be right next to each other. We've got some more Snapchatting. We've got some more Instagramming, on and on and on, going on Yik Yak, going on TikTok, right? All this, right? And then I'm trying to get to where, and then at 11:56, Bethany calls 911. So not the one that actually saw the intruder, right? Not Dylan. Bethany calls 911 at 11:56. Kane's got some issues going on with his footstool. Well, that's no good. What is Twizzlip? And the 911 call is equally as interesting. We probably should take a look at that. So, I mean, one big question, right? Well, there's a lot of questions, but here pertaining to this is, why the fuck did they not call 911? I mean, this is something that I've been saying, right? Like, if you see an intruder, going back to this, if you see an intruder wearing all black in a ski mask, even if you don't, I mean, it seems like they didn't know people were dead. People had different opinions, but let's just leave the other roommates out. Let's just say, pretend it's just Dylan and Bethany that live in the house, or the other roommates aren't there, or whatever. If somebody sees somebody in all black with a ski mask that they think is an intruder, right? That alone, right? Again, like, I'm so freaked out. I'm scared. Come to my room. Run down here. Like, why would you not call 911 even just because your own safety is obviously in jeopardy, right? And it's not like they immediately fell asleep because there's also other activity. They're calling the other roommates. The other roommates aren't answering. Again, more motivation to call 911, right? And then even the next day, all this stuff. It doesn't, the way I put it before on the other live stream was like, there's no follow-up to this whole thing of like seeing somebody and being scared. Now, there could be some sort of explanation that we won't know until I take the stand, but it doesn't make sense, right? Franks is here. Shout out to Franks. Were they underage? I don't recall. I think Dylan was underage. I'm sure someone in the chat will know if Bethany was underage. It is a very long time in between. Yes. Yes, they were drunk. So let me pull up. I'm gonna have to unshare reshare, but let me pull up also the 911 call. Okay, here it is. Okay. Okay, here we go. All right. There's been a fuck tons. Oh, by the way, I should also mention this is a death penalty case. For anyone who's just now joining us, Mr. Alessi is here in the chat, and he's obviously and understandably not completely up to speed on this case. So that's why we are kind of reviewing it, because a lot of people have been following this case closely. So yes, it is a death penalty case. Frank's command is still broken. There's, by the way, there's been some other commands that haven't been working too, and then sometimes they just start working. It's very funny. We've got some props here coming in for Mr. Alessi. Glad you're here. Welcome, Gwennon. Right. Of course, calling 911 is the thing. Like, whether you leave your room or stay in your room, none of that, you know, or jump out. It doesn't, like, no matter what you do or don't do and where you are, if you've seen what Dylan says she saw, that's enough. Call 911, right? I'm with you 100% on that one, Gwennon, about abolishing the death penalty. Okay, so here's the 911 call, all right? So we're going to read this again. So 911, location of your emergency. So remember, this is initially Bethany that had called, right? Hi, something is happening. Something happened in our house. We don't know what. What is the address of the emergency? 1122, no, don't. What is the rest of the address? Oh, Kings Road, which is weird because Kings Road is not correct. It's King Road. But she says Kings. Okay, and is that a house or an apartment? It's a house. Can you repeat the address to make sure that I have it right? And then someone else takes over the phone. I'll talk to you guys. We're live. We live at the right. So this is like a neighbor. We're next to them. And then the operator or dispatcher rather says, I need someone to repeat the address for verification. The address, 1122 King Road. So the neighbor gets the address right. And what's the phone number? Da, da, da. Okay, tell me exactly what's going on. And again, this is like a neighbor, right? One of the roommates who's passed out and she was drunk last night and she's not waking up. And then somebody else says, no, we saw. And then the dispatcher says, okay. And then, and they saw some man in their house last night. Yeah. And then, so they're passing the phone around and then, hi. And then the dispatcher, and are you with the patient? Okay. I need someone to keep the phone, stop passing it around. Can I just tell you what happened pretty much? What is going on currently? Someone passed out right now. I don't really know, but pretty much at 4 a.m. And then the dispatcher, okay, I need to know what's going on right now. If someone is passed out, can you find that out? And then, yeah, I'll come. Come on, we got to go check, but we have to. Is she passed out? She's passed out. What's wrong? And then dispatching Moscow law ambulance for, I don't know, why does it say law? And dispatching an ambulance, right? And then she's not waking up. And then she's saying unconsciousness, 1122 King Road. They've got somebody on route there. Okay, one moment. I'm getting help started that way. And all ambulance respond for unconsciousness. And then the dispatcher saying to whoever else is, another, whatever, the first responders, multiple RPs on the phone advising the roommate on scene is passed out and not waking up, believe she got drunk last night and unintelligible, about a male being in the room with them. And now they're saying, how old is she? She's 20. Okay, yeah, that confirms. So that would be Xana, right? I guess they're talking about she's underage. And then, hello. I need someone to stop passing the phone around because I've talked to 4 different people. Okay, sorry, they just gave me the phone. Is she breathing? Hello? Is she breathing? No. So at that point, somebody must have gone and looked, right? Now, one thing I noted before that's interesting is oftentimes you'll have them ask, can you take a pulse? Or usually, can you try CPR or how to start CPR, right? And we didn't have any of that in this call. No, normally that's what they have, right? In all of these, it's like, go take a pulse or let's do CPR. Shout out to DSN who's also joining us. And yeah, they don't say anything about blood. Another thing, right? That is wild. Shout out to Happy Annie, trying to catch up. It's harder to read the chat when I'm reading a document, but I just want to welcome everybody. Shout out to Miss Mandy Reacts. I believe you are new in the chat here. So welcome. Love having new squirrel friends. And also for anyone who would like to join the Discord, it's fun, it's free, and Nightbot is putting a link in the chat for that. We do also have memberships available recently too that you guys can always partake in. So hi, need some Z's. Welcome. Okay, so all right. So she's not breathing, right? And then Bethany or Dylan, I need you talking to them, okay? I can't talk to them. I need you to talk to them. Hello, I've already sent ambulance and law enforcement. And then this is where they're talking about the defibrillator. And as I've mentioned before, I think the dispatcher is talking to other first responders, and, Bethany thinks they're talking to her. The patient is not conscious, not breathing. That's the dispatcher. And then law enforcement, or first, somebody's there, first responders there. I forget who it was. Django, maybe that dude. But anyway, so, and then there you have, I think we have a homicide. So Q4 is man number 2. It's a law enforcement officer. So, and again, there's no timestamps here, so we don't know how much time has elapsed. Now, as far as the call goes, there is an audio of the call that has been released. Welcome again to you, official. And that whole thing, right? So we haven't covered that. I've not even, I don't think, listened to the whole thing, because I have a lot of questions about that. And, mainstream media has come back and, they're saying it's verified. It's not. What's interesting is there's been nothing said about it from, like, on the record from anybody, like the attorneys or Judge Hippler. There's nothing on the docket about it. For example, in this filing, right? Let me go up. It's up here. In this filing, right? Check it out. So Exhibit S2, audio file on thumb drive, hand delivered separately, sealed. Okay. So in other words, this has not been, the call that exists out there, whether legitimate or not, has not been released intentionally by anybody from the, involve any of the parties, right? So not from the defense, not from the state. In fact, it's supposed to be sealed. So that is why I am not doing anything with that at this juncture, unless and until we see some verification. Everything from Judge Hippler was like, nope, it's not been released. So that's another good point here, that it's odd that law enforcement said, I think, right? As in, I think we have a homicide, given what we've been told. Yeah, there should be a lot of blood. Right. There's no timestamps for the call. Yeah. Yep. And needs some agrees. I agree. The call not being in the court record makes me question it. And that's why I appreciate you guys, because we've actually talked very little about it, but I've not had anybody say, oh, can we hear the 911 call? Like, so I think that probably you guys are, for the most part, on the same page that, like, I don't know. I don't know. The thing is like, with the way it is with AI and everything else these days, I just don't, unless and until it's released via the court record, like I said, I'm not going to do anything with that. So, coolio. So, okay. So, but next up, let me pull up. Yes. I wanted to follow back on something. So we covered this document previously. This is the one about the Amazon click activity. Great question here from Robert Alessi. What made them arrest this Kohberger? So the way they got to him was from the IGG. They did IGG in record time. Really, it's, it's IGG, not IGG, right? Is the way I've been calling it. Because, IGG is building out a family tree and all this and that. There's a lot of issues with the IG. It's a whole thing. It is a whole thing. But it was the first thing they did in this case. Usually it's like a last resort for cold cases, right? It was the first thing they did in this case. And the IGG led them, apparently, according to the state, to 4 brothers. And then somehow, again, in record time, they were able to, oh, by the way, they had to backdoor and access these databases that law enforcement isn't supposed to be using. So there's that. And part of that is it will show you matches of people who've opted out. And so they violated the terms from the DOJ interim policy to do that. But they got his name that way. And so the state wants to be able to bring it in at trial as a quote unquote generic tip, just the tip. that's a whole other thing. But that is literally that's how they got to his name. That's what, so it's in terms of arresting, like the PCA, they don't mention IgG in the PCA. They say the DNA on the knife sheath, right, was a match, but they only had that because they had a buccal swab, and they only had that because they had the person, and they only got to that because of the IgG. So what's in the PCA is like the really shitty Elantra footage, right? And then the cell phone is a mess. I wouldn't even really include that. The Elantra is a mess also. Really, everything is a mess. Everything is a mess apart from the DNA match. Like, that's in terms of like the PCA, right? Basically, I mean, Ann Taylor, his lead defense counsel, even says, when they had all the hearings on the motions to suppress, literally, it's like, this is the one thing. It's the DNA. And she's like, I hope it's not just one thing, right? And then they have a whole discussion back and forth with her and Judge Hippler. Is that enough for a jury? If it's just the one thing, if it's just the DNA on this one thing, is that enough for a jury, right? And for some juries, it might be. For others, it might not. But yeah, hopefully that kind of answers your question. But it is a great question because it is it's not the strongest case, to say the least. And we've done a lot with the maps and with the cell phones. We're going to do some more follow-up on that with the new information that we got. But we've done a lot with that. And for those of you guys who haven't seen, I have like the overlays with the cell towers and the two different routes, the route offered by the state and the route offered by the defense. And if anyone wants me to pull those up, we totally can, and take a look. Yeah. I think it's a brilliant defense strategy. They're trying to bait the state into opening the door on themselves, which I love. There a lot of strategies coming out in these recent court filings, guys. Yeah, he's getting railroaded like Karen, whether he did it or not. Agree. Yeah, the DNA is also messed, but in a less clear way. So you're saying Moscow shares one. Y'all. Yeah, the chain of custody issue with the DNA is less clear. The defense hasn't made quite as big of a deal about that as they have other things. So the cell towers, hold on, give me just a second. Why is it not just trying to? Okay, I'm trying to pull up the cell towers here. Some of it has actually like changed recently, according to Twiz. Okay, let's just see if this works. All right. So that tower. So in terms of a tower, and actually it's funny because Twiz and I were talking about this. In terms of it, is there a tower that services? Okay, let me just reorient y'all. So on the right here, can you guys see my mouse? That's Moscow, okay? And on the left, that's Pullman. And that is where Washington State University is. It's where the defendant was living as a student. And they're like, 15 minutes or whatever apart from each other, just over you cross the border between Washington and Idaho, and then you can get between these two different universities, right? So now this tower here in Pullman would stretch over to Moscow. Now the Moscow towers don't stretch over to Pullman. So if there's a tower that a phone could ping off of that someone could be in one or the other, it would be this one. This is the Northwest Olson Street tower. That's a good question. Let's see if I can find out an answer for that. Needs and Disease is asking, does anyone know if juries can ask questions in criminal trials in Idaho? They did it in the Daybell cases, but let's just see here. It says in Idaho, jurors are generally, oh, let me make sure this is for criminal. Okay, the court may instruct, so it's up to the judge, as it usually is, right? The court may instruct jurors that they are individually permitted to submit to the court a written question directed to any witness. Let me pull this up for you guys. Yeah, so here we go. So the court may instruct jurors that they're individually allowed to, or permitted to submit to the court a written question directed to any witness. If questions are submitted, the parties or counsel must be given. So yes, they can. There you go. They absolutely can, and it's up to the judge. There you go. So I would imagine that, was it this tower? No, it was this tower. So this is really going to matter as far as those last 7 minutes, right? Now, one thing that neither Twiz nor I know is what the different colors mean. Does anybody in the chat happen to know? And for anyone who doesn't know Twiz must be asleep, but he's also done a lot of work with these maps, and he lives in Pullman and has been to some of the hearings and is going to be attending the hearing on April 9th, which is the next hearing for this case. So, you know, we've talked a lot about this. So neither he nor I know what the shading means, and the website does not tell you what the shading means. But nonetheless, this tower here, again on Northwest Olson Street in Pullman, does reach over here to the Moscow area. And it covers this exact area where that really important point, right? The 7 minutes, where's the car facing? This is going to be a hell of a thing when we get to learn more in trial. Like, wow, this whole thing, which direction was the car pointing, right? So, hopefully the jurors can take notes. Yes. I love it. I love it when jurors can take notes and ask questions. I think they should be able to do both. Totally. Yes. Can you imagine, guys, the questions they would have for DM and BF? Oh my goodness. So I'm going to leave this up in the background in case we want to refer back to it. But I wanted to touch on one other thing here real quick. So I know there's a lot of different ideas about alternative theories or other people that maybe were involved. And I just was thinking this the other day, and I was like, because he's got such a great defense team, right? And I was thinking, does Idaho have an affirmative defense for a third-party culprit like Karen Reed? They do. Third-party practice. So when a defending party may bring in a third party. Counterclaim. Wait, plaintiffs, this is supposed to be criminal. Hold on. Civil procedure. Hold on. Let me pull up. This is the civil. Let me pull up the criminal. Hold on. That's not what I'm looking for. Well, maybe not. Let me see. Okay. So They might be able, it says the defendant might show that a third party had the opportunity to commit the crime while the defendant did not. So the opportunity, right? So motive and opportunity. Motive means an opportunity. We hear about that in all kinds of cases, right? So, let me see if this has it. Just looking. Okay, so no, so I don't, that's so interesting because, okay. So it's not listed the way it was on the thing that I'm showing you guys, which I thought was for criminal. Anyway, so I'm just making sure. Discovery. I might have to do some more digging. So I'll table that. I'll table that and do some more digging. It might have to be that I have to dig into the case law to find this. So let me table that thought and I'll do some more digging as to definitively what type of third-party defense is available for Idaho for criminal cases. So yeah, I'm with you on that, Franks. I love Judge, and I miss Judge. I would totally sign that petition. Yeah, I know. It was so crazy. So many people were like hating on Judge. I always loved Judge. And now I know that some people always wanted Judge, but some people maybe that wanted a new judge are now singing a different tune, as it were, after we have Judge Hippler. So, okay, we will table that. I'll do some more digging as to make sure that I'm pulling up stuff that is criminal as far as bringing in a third party defense. But, okay. But I wanted to take another look at something here with this third party, or not third party, oh my God, sorry, the knife sheath. So something that is interesting is this. I don't know if anyone else noticed this, but check this out. As I was, I always think of more things than when I'm doing timestamps, right? Or things dawn on me, as it were. So this included temporal limitations based on the officer's investigation, which limited the search from March 20th, 2022 through March 30th, 2022. Time it was known Bryan Kohberger purchased a K-bar knife with sheath and sharpener from Amazon.com. So what's interesting to me is why is it a window of 10 days, right? Because if you've got the date of a purchase on Amazon, it's an exact day. Has anyone else noticed that? Like, time it was known. How is it known by whom? But if it's known, it should be an exact day. Right? You guys see why that's weird? But the other thing that is so interesting is this, that, where is it? Let me do Control F myself. All right. So the K-bar knife sheath with a USMC logo was found next to the victims. That's the knife sheath that they have, right? No knife, just the sheath. USMC. Now, what's so fascinating, we'll see, it comes up again. K-bar had USMC. Okay, that's going back to the PCA. So what's so interesting, though, is that none of this that they have, whether it's the click activity or the time that they think there was a purchase or anything about this with related to Kohberger, says anything about USMC. And if that were the case, why would they not include it, the state, right? Like a K-bar knife with sheath. Click activity, items, accessories, right? And again, purchase of a K-bar knife with sheath. Click activity for search for a knife with sheath. There is nothing about the USMC apart from the sheath that was found at the crime scene. But as far as what they're offering here with the the Amazon activity, there's no USMC. So that's interesting. That's hilarious, official. And the other thing I was going to say is that I think that, it's so interesting, the timing of this, right? The state had yet to say until this document anything about to verify or valid or whatever. This was unknown, right? People could have maybe thought potentially they had this because we knew Amazon was a big deal in this case. This is the first time this has been said in a court filing that there is a purchase, right? And again, there's all these issues like the 10 days and it's not USMC, but still, this is the closest they've gotten to stating anything like this. I think this was in response to the defense's filing with the Dylan and Bethany text messages. So we're seeing now, because in this case, right, so much we used to be sealed and now it's not. So the strategy is shifting, where a lot of the things that are contained in these recent filings, I think, are meant more for the public and not for the judge. And now they're playing this whole game of like the publicity and the narrative in the media, right? So what happened is this, right? You have the defense filing which we just covered a few minutes earlier, right? With all of those text messages, right? And then you have the 911 call and everything. And there's so many issues. And P being on Instagram and all that, right? And then you have the state's filing here, where what does it talk about? It talks about the knife. And if any of you guys see on mainstream media or whatever, even on YouTube, what is everybody talking about? What is everybody talking about? Put it in the chat. What is everybody talking about? Put it in the chat what everyone is talking about. I'll give you guys a few minutes to respond to that. And in the meantime, I will pull up our next document. Did they announce the sheath before they got to BK? When did the public find out? Honestly, I can't remember. Somebody in the chat might know. I think it wasn't until the PCA, if memory serves. I think it was not until the PCA that we knew about the sheath. Pretty sure. And I'm sure there's videos of people touring that area, but I don't know who. I'm pretty sure it was the PCA. Like when Bill Thompson gave that press conference, I don't think there was any mention of the knife sheath. If you guys want to go back and watch that press conference, I haven't done that in a long time. That might be something that's interesting to do after we read these documents. I haven't watched that in a long time. Might be worth doing just to see what was said exactly and the timing of it. But I don't think he mentioned the knife sheath. Yeah, I would imagine it does have a serial number or like what do they call it? Like a PC number thing or whatever. Like, yeah, I would definitely think that. November 17th. You're saying that's when the knife sheath was mentioned or to the public? Do you remember where that came out? Was that the same day as the press conference? Like I said, I don't remember. It's one of the reasons I'm saying we could go back and watch it. Let me see. That was on, well, there was one on 12:30. Was there one before that? Yeah, I'm seeing 12:30. Oh, in a news article. Okay. Huh. What news article? Do you know? Meg's kids driving her crazy. Classic. Okay, so 2 questions for you guys in the chat, though. One was, what is it that everybody's talking about ever since these recent filings came out, at least in terms of mainstream media? And the second question was, do you guys want to watch that Bill Thompson's press conference after we finish reading the documents. Let me know. In the meantime, we will pop on over to our next filing here. So that was sort of review, like follow up from previous live streams, right? Because I'd already covered that document. So this is now new for us covering it here. So this is the state's response to defendant's motion limine number 2, vague and undisclosed expert testimony. That they aren't claiming that, but that could be inferred. To answer that question, the question, I'll just read it in case anyone's listening and not looking at the screen. The question was, they're claiming he searched the sheath to replace after the unalivings. Yeah, they're not claiming, it's just inferred because it's like there's searches after the homicides, right? And like I said, who would be that dumb, right? But and again, for anyone who hasn't heard this, I'll just reiterate, it's a household Amazon account for his entire family. That's going to be a big problem for the state, I think. So Carla says she'll listen to the press conference. Okay, thank you for weighing in, Carla. The selfie. And I had not heard anything about selfie. Actually, Twiz mentioned it to me this morning. I had not actually heard about that or seen anything about that. But that is good information to know. That's one of the things that people are talking about. Shout out to P Fox. Welcome, welcome. Okay. So, all right, let's, oh, and right. And that's of course definitely possible. He could have searched about it when the public was told. Right. Right. Yeah. And that's why it definitely will matter, right? When the public did find out, that is important to know for sure when the public found out. And yeah. And so I think Just Beth is trying to find that article. That would be helpful because also was that something that was leaked, right? Okay, so a state incorporates the contemporaneously filed Okay, fine. Factual and procedural history. Right, they set deadlines related to expert disclosures. This is the same thing they did before. Where they're just saying, yeah, it wasn't late, and that the defense isn't saying it was late. That's what this looks like so far, which is frustrating. In summary, the court advised that it generally doesn't tell the parties what to disclose. Rather, it determines the admissibility of the evidence at trial. The court noted that the parties should overly disclose opinions, but not to the extent of the civil rules. The court issued a word of caution, instructing the parties if there was not a separate expert report to rely upon, the disclosure should cover essentially everything that the expert is going to say. To the state, the court instructed, our work was not done. The court did not set any additional deadlines, but stated supplements would be reasonably allowed. That's not quite what he said. He was like, you have to make a showing of good cause. That same day, on January 23rd, the defendant filed defendant supplemental response to request for discovery regarding expert witnesses, disclosing 16 expert witnesses. State filed another thing. Great. Disclosing one expert. On February 10th, state asked for a 4-day extension to file rebuttal experts. The defendant did not object to this request. The state noted it was awaiting additional information it has requested and will finalize supplemental responses for the outstanding experts. Once completed, those supplements will be filed promptly pursuant to the court's instruction. That same day, the defendant filed defendant's motion for leave to file additional expert witness disclosures, requesting an extension to supplement 2 expert disclosures. On March 10th, the state filed a response indicating that the state did not object to the defendant's request for an extension. Twiz is here. Did you fall asleep, Twiz? As part of the response, the state noted it serves the interest of the parties and the court for there to be reasonable flexibility to facilitate the development and exchange of relevant information to assist the trial jury. The state filed the remaining amended supplemental expert disclosures. This is really interesting because in the defense filing, okay, this is what I wanted to see. I was going to say in the defense filing, they laid out specific witnesses one by one. And I was like, where is that from the state? Here it is. This is the part that matters, right? The specific issues with each witness. Yeah, there's no weapon. Shout out to Toes. Welcome, welcome. Anyone else who's here? Oh, Gwennon says she never saw the press conference, so she would watch. I believe you're a she. Correct me if I'm wrong, if you feel so inclined. Okay, good. Thank you for weighing in. And I agree as well that there was very little effort put in to find the actual weapon. Yeah. Yeah, right. I know. I would agree with that. So welcome everybody who's just now joining us. Welcome Echoes of Clarity. So, okay, so Jenny Ayers. The state filed an expert disclosure for Jenny Ayers on December 18th, 2024. The state filed a rebuttal disclosure for Ms. Ayers on February 16th, 2025. In accordance with the court's guidance, the state filed an amended disclosure. They're just saying we complied. Okay, Nicholas Balance. The state filed an expert disclosure for Special Agent Balance. The state disclosed S.A. Balance as a rebuttal expert on February 16, 2025. In accordance with the court's guidance, the state filed an amended disclosure. Defendants' multiple filings in this case regarding challenging the cell phone data is in direct contradiction to their claim that S.A. Balance's disclosure makes it impossible to anticipate what he may testify to as an expert in this matter. I'm going to read that part again. Defendants' multiple filings in this case regarding challenging the cell phone data is in direct contradiction to their claim that S.A. Balance's disclosure makes it impossible to anticipate what he may testify to as an expert in this matter. I disagree with that statement because they can still challenge the cell phone data and not know what he's going to testify about because he may not testify about all of it. Anyway, the defendant does not provide a legal basis to exclude S.A. Balance's testimony. Instead, defendant appears to disagree with Balance's anticipated testimony. The proper avenue is to address through cross-examination and rebuttal expert testimony. They're saying they're complying. Okay. Heather and Jarrett Barnhardt. This was a weird one because they're like a husband and wife team, it looks like. I mean, not even it looks like, they are. State filed an expert disclosure for Heather Barnhardt and separately Jared Barnhardt. What are they even doing? Let me see. Forensic analysts. Oh, they do celebrate. But why are they bringing in both the husband and the wife? That's so interesting. I think I have a picture of them here. Is this them? Y'all. Looks like this is them. Is this them? Hold on. This might be them. It could be another couple that have the same names. Let me add her maiden name. Where was it? Mahalik. So the way it's spelled, hold on, let me go back. The way it's spelled is with a D. Google wants me to type it without a D. No, it needs the D. Oh my God. Well, you know what? This is interesting, isn't it? Because we've got a Jared Barnhardt without a D. Oh my God. Stop it. We got him without a D. And this is, he does celebrate, right? So that's fascinating because here's the thing. Is the state spelling their own expert witnesses' names wrong? I wouldn't say it's outside their own possibility, right? How many people named Jared Barnhardt work for Celebrate? Like, dude. Shout out to DB. Welcome. I had a question for you as well, DB, from the Discord about what you were referencing with that. There was like a exhibit number or something or disclosure. Anyway, shout out to DB. Right? I know. It's just like, don't tell Twiz to go to bed. So you can also do. Oh, you're saying put them. Okay, I see what you're saying. Okay, I'll do that. Thank you. I'll do that. Thank you, DB. I see what you're saying. Okay. So I put the quotes around it. I put the quotes around it. Let me get rid of this maiden name in case that wasn't the right person. Let's do that. Pulls up the Idaho Judicial Cases of Interest page. Again, look at this. Smarter Forensics. I mean, and it has it without a D. That is wild, guys. Isn't that wild? This is talking about iOS 14. This has got to be people with the dude. Did they just spell it wrong? What is happening? You guys see what I'm saying? Let's see what this is. Oh my God. About Us. It's weird that I can't find that much information about them though. Like these other expert witnesses, you guys have seen us do this on other live streams. We can pull them up and read their full thing, right? I mean, this is kind of bizarre, but it's also bizarre, like I said initially, that it's a husband and wife couple, right? Like how often do you see that with expert witnesses? It seems like that would be problematic, you know? Okay, thank you for that suggestion. Okay, I'll do that. Let's try that one. Okay. Weird. I'm typing it in. Y'all, so I typed in literally exactly what DB just said, as you can see on the screen here. Not like, that's it. This is weird. This is really weird. This is really weird. Because all these other expert witnesses that we've looked, I mean, you normally can find, this is weird, isn't it? Huh. Let me pull up the defense's initial filing on this and see how they spelled it. This is crazy. So oh my God, you guys, I'm going to lose my mind. So here's what the defense said. Look at this. Look, look, look. Oh my God. They spelled it without a D. Holy shit. Mr. and Mrs. Barnhardt. Holy fuck. I don't even know. That's bizarre. That's wild. I mean, the misspellings are not weird at all, but you would think that with their expert witnesses' names, they would get that correct. Yeah, if I'm going silent, I'm pulling something else up, or I'm reading something and thinking. But yeah, I just use what's on StreamYard. But thank you, I'm glad it works. Although there's not really much background noise anyway. But yeah, wow. Include the and. Like this, y'all. I think the state spelled it wrong. So let's take the D's out, the double D's, and see what we get. See, now we actually, but the thing that's interesting is we're still not getting like a website like we usually get for people, right? Like we're getting this link back to Smarter Forensics, which I already clicked on. That's like a blog. This is weird. Oh, look at this, Reddit. Who are Mr. and Mrs. Barnhardt mentioned in this motion? That is really funny. Oh, look at this. They're mentioned on, let's pull this up. They're mentioned on Celebrate at AI and CSAM. Oh my God, cookies. Let me do a Control F myself. Here we go. Stay updated on research. Celebrate's experts, Heather Barnhardt and Jared Barnhardt, just published a blog. Yeah, the blog. That's the blog that we just looked at. It's still odd though that they don't have like their own websites, or that there's not other things available. Like let's pull this up. I mean, again, it's not their website, but okay, they wrote this article. Husband and wife team wrote this article again, right? Wow. Let's read what they are. So Heather Barnhardt is a senior director of community engagement at Celebrate, digital investigator, or in Premier. Okay, they're just saying what Cellbrite is. She educates and advises digital forensic professionals on cases around the globe. For more than 20 years, she's worked in high-profile cases, investigating everything from child exploitation to Osama bin Laden's digital media. What? Jared Barnhardt is the customer experience team lead at Cellbrite. Customer experience team lead. How is that? How is his? Okay. A former detective and mobile forensics engineer, Jared is highly specialized in digital forensics, regularly training law enforcement and lending his expertise. So I will say this, though. Those pictures that we started with where they look young and they're getting married and whatnot, that's these people because it had that maiden name. That's them. Now they look young in those pictures. So I don't know how they've been doing this for so long, but there's just literally everything with this is like I just have more questions. Wow. Okay. Great. So let's go back to this. All right. So affirmative, the state spelled it wrong. All right. There you go. Next, Shane Cox. So this is for the Amazon activity. And they're just saying we submitted everything. Great. Michael Douglas. Same. Okay. He's another Amazon dude. They're saying we just submitted it. Whatever. Okay. We'll see. Time will tell. And Idaho State Police lab witnesses. There's no legal basis to limit expert testimony to what is authored in a report as the defendant claims. As stated above, the prosecutor must provide a written summary or report of any testimony the state intends to introduce at trial. The facts or data need not be admissible in evidence if they are a type reasonably relied upon by experts in that particular field, informing opinions on the subject. Okay, thank you, DB. Yeah, we haven't covered that one yet. Thank you. Gotcha. Good. I don't know that we'll get to that one today. It might be on the next one, but it makes sense because I figured if I had read it already, I would have recognized it. So Keynes is saying, I wish more people would call me Slugger. We can start calling you Slugger, although you're always going to be Rat Daddy. So they're saying they filed all their shit. That's it. They're just saying we complied, basically. And then Rylene Nowlin, we're going to read her affidavit as well today. Eric Seat. These are not very informative. It's just saying we've complied, basically. Just kind of, oh, Mallory. Okay, this is interesting. Darren Gilbertson. The defendant disclosed expert opinions claiming that more than one assailant was necessary. Oh, this is new information. Everybody, listen up. This is new information because remember, some of their expert opinions and shit, they filed that under seal. We did not know this. We did not know this. This is the state, again, putting this out on purpose for the public, right? They know we're going to learn this from them. The defendant disclosed expert opinions claiming that more than one assailant was necessary in order to accomplish the homicides in the suggested time frame offered by the state. The state filed a rebuttal expert disclosure for Detective Gilbertson that he would provide testimony that investigators conducted timed runs. There's the timed runs again. We are laughing about that from when that was brought up in a different filing about like how many people did they kill, right? Because it's plural. So if they did timed runs, and at a minimum that's 2, they must have had to kill at least 8 people in order to accomplish this. At 112 Duking Road to gain an understanding of the approximate time needed to carry out the homicides. Yeah, so there's got to be all these dead bodies laying around, right? This was done to see if one person could have committed the 4 homicides in the approximately 13-minute time frame. I mean, this is really stupid because you know that no matter what, they're going to do this in a way that is going to prove their theory of the case. But also, it can't be realistic unless you actually have them doing all the things. Anyway, estimated by investigators, there's all of these timed runs indicated that one assailant could have carried out the 4 homicides in the suggested time frame. Wow. Oh, that's funny, DB. Thank you. He says Jared Barnhardt tweeted out that he was so proud of Ian Whiffin's work in the Karen Reed case. Yeah, any of you guys that use Twitter and social media, I'm not on those. Feel free to like look these people up and like let us know what you find because that is very fascinating. Very fascinating. The defendant claims this rebuttal testimony should be excluded under the Idaho Rule of Evidence 403B. This testimony is clearly relevant to rebut the defendant's allegation that 4 homicides could not be accomplished in the proposed timeline. The defendant is asking that they be allowed to, 1, offer testimony that it is impossible for one assailant to commit this crime in the time frame indicated by investigators, and 2, prevent the state from offering rebuttal evidence contradicting that testimony. That flies in the face of fairness. So just to reiterate here, 403 See, the reason I was like, I wanted to think about this 403B. I'm like, I don't think there is a 403B. Let me make sure that there's not one in Idaho. Hold on. Fucking hell. Because if he meant 404B, that doesn't make any sense here. Hold on. Jesus, Santa. Like, affirmative. Affirmative. There is no 403B. I knew there wasn't one in the federal rules, right? Of evidence, but I was like, that's why I was like, let me just double check for Idaho. Nope. This is rule 403. There is no 403B. You've got to be kidding me. This is insane. This is insane. There is no look, like y'all. There is no rule 403B. I'm going to lose my mind. What the fuck? So, and I don't even think rule 403, even if you leave, even if you say the B was a typo, that's not the right rule. Like, it would be 401, right? The test for relevancy is rule 401. And there's also no 401B. So, what? No, sorry, there is a 401B. Just kidding. There is a 401B. But you would never cite just A or B. It's always the whole rule. So the test for relevance, right? A, it has any tendency to make a fact more or less probable than it would be without the evidence. And B, the fact is of consequence in determining the action. So being that they said here, where was it? So it seems like they're talking about relevancy here, but that's rule 401. Rule 403 is excluding evidence for prejudice, right? Confusion, waste of time. And then 404 is the character evidence, prior bad acts. So you got me. This is insanity, though, I will say. This is insanity. Thank you, DB. Thank you, thank you. What is SANS? Are you saying to do that search? Kane, can you put it in the Discord? Yeah, so I appreciate Kane's following up on a tour of Moscow. Can you put it in the Discord? Okay, I did the search with the sands. Okay. Yeah, so that's them. That picture we saw of the couple, like the young looking couple getting married. How the hell are they been doing this for 20 years? Wow. Okay, that's the same dude though, for sure. All right. Oh my God, here's a video. You guys, hold on. Well, we're doing this now, apparently.
I actually met Jared, I think at the Jackalope. Well, no, that's when I really got to know you. He was my student at
That's his wife, guys.
the D4 Summit a few years ago.
He was her student.
Really got to know the real Jared at Jackalope. So Austin kind of takes us back.
Wait, so can I pull down my hold on. Okay, so my squanguin was in the way. She's up there in the top right corner. Heather, that's his wife. She's the one talking. She's talking about how they met. This is insane.
I'm really excited for his talk. He's a brilliant
This video is from 2020.
mobile researcher, and
she's calling him brilliant. It's her husband. You think she's biased, guys?
Finally spreading the goodness back into the D4 community. So
this
go
is
ahead,
insane.
Jared.
Yeah, thank you, Toes. Thank you.
Very much, Heather. Make sure I can drive here.
Oh my God, there he is. Do you guys want to watch this or no? I'm really curious, at least to take a look. Y'all let me know. This is where we okay, cool. You guys are saying sure. Okay. This is them. They're youngsters, guys, somehow. Holy shit.
Looks
Okay.
great.
Good to go. All right, thank you. So yeah, my name is Jared Barnhardt, and
Oh my God.
appreciate the opportunity to be able to do a talk here at the SANS Summit. Thank you, Heather, for the kind words. And yeah, meeting Heather
now.
in Austin and the Jackalope, all great memories. But
Sorry. What is going on? Talking about the Jackalope where they met, and he's like, all great memories. Well, I'm gonna start this over because my brain is buffering, but also so now that you guys can see the top right, let me just start this over. This is like the way that they're talking about, like they're like, I feel like their romantic life in a way, like how they met. Like, what is going on? Okay. Yep, there it is.
I actually met Jared, I think at the Jackalope. Well, no, that's when I really got to know you. He was my student at the D4 Summit a few years ago.
She said, that's when I really got to know you. And then she says he. So she's like talking to him, but then talking to the audience. This is crazy.
Really got to know the real Jared at Jackalope. So Austin kind of takes us back.
Is that when y'all first did it?
I'm really excited for his talk. He's a brilliant mobile researcher, and he's finally spreading the goodness back into the D4 community. So go ahead, Jared.
Oh my God.
right.
Oh my
Thank you
God.
very much, Heather. Make sure I can drive here.
Oh my God.
Looks
Okay.
great.
Good to go. All right, thank you. So yeah, my name is Jared Barnhardt, and I appreciate the opportunity to be able to do a talk here at the SANS Summit. Thank you, Heather, for the kind words. And yeah, meeting Heather in Austin and the Jackalope, all great memories.
Great.
But just very briefly
Wonderful.
about myself,
What do y'all
I'm
do?
a retired police officer from Maryland,
Oh my God.
and now I'm a forensic engineer for Parsons Corporation, completely focused on mobile research. So this talk today is going to be about some of the artifacts that are revealed to us in iOS 13, and partly in thanks to the Checkmate exploit or vulnerability that was discovered last year. So this tweet went out last year, last September, and it sort of changed the culture for iOS research, jailbreaking, forensics altogether. The part that I want to focus on here is that this exploit affects hundreds of millions of iDevices. So we spent a lot of time looking into third-party applications and looking into all sorts of other things about our devices. But hundreds of millions of devices on the same operating system essentially have hundreds of millions of the same native files, the same directories and the same databases and things that we should be excellent at. And if we're not excellent at them, then I feel like we're sort of missing the boat. So when this was released, it was announced sort of right after the iOS 13 release. Not iOS 13's fault at all. It's a vulnerability that affected devices going way back. It's great for us in that we don't have to necessarily hyper-focus on iOS versioning anymore and check and pray and hope for a jailbreak so you can continue certain research and constantly shuffling around your versions and hoping that you get a jailbreak at the right time. We have almost immediate jailbreak access, and that really gives us.
I wonder, did they have to jailbreak his phone? Did that come up somewhere, or am I thinking of something else? No, I'm thinking, so they had to jailbreak Zachary Hughes's phone in that trial. They had to, yeah, that might be what I'm getting. I wonder though, again, I was talking to Twiz about this as well this morning, how it's just so odd how like there's so little about the Solid Right report. Like we know nothing, right, about the phone extraction. But I'm wondering if they had to jailbreak it. Wasn't there something that came out in one of the hearings about, I'm trying to think, about having some sort of thing on his phone that would make it harder to access stuff. Y'all let me know if you remember that, because that could have been, again, from trying to think, it might have been the Zachary Hughes thing, but I feel like whether there was a whiff of that or not, I feel like I've gotten that kind of impression that they had maybe a little bit more difficulty getting into the phone. So I wonder if that's not that would be the reason why they haven't told us what they found, right? They being the state or the defense. But anyway, yeah, encryption, that type of thing. I'm wondering. Yeah.
access to the full file system, which gives us access to those native files. This talk is not about checkmate, but it sort of pivots from that to the access that we have. Mattia did a talk that was recorded that I mentioned here, but this is really great for us. So now that we have the access,
What is happening?
and
What?
lots of people have the ability,
What?
I'm encouraging everyone to go all in on native artifacts.
Oh my God. You guys.
If there's something you're interested in, if you look at your device and you ever wonder, how is Apple doing that? How does it know that I really am about to drive to that place? It's
Oh,
in a
boy.
file. It's in there somewhere.
Oh.
So I encourage you.
Oh. Let's hear that again. Twiz, are you listening?
And you ever wonder, how is Apple doing that? How does it know that I really am about to drive to that place? It's in a file. It's in there somewhere. So I encourage you to figure out where, figure out why. Okay. And I threw this quote in there, just trying to be comical, but I have been doing research for a little while now. And what's difficult is to put yourself.
Look, you look at the bottom part. It's credited there to JFK-ish.
Out there. And I figured there's no better place to start than saying.
Oh, Jared, what a sense.
Tens of thousands.
Y'all, do you think Heather got the hots for him because of his sense of humor? What do you guys think? Was it his sense of humor? What is his knowledge about jailbreaking? I could go on and on from there with jokes. We'll table that for now.
Signed up seemed like a good starting point. So here I am, sort of putting myself out there and sharing some research with the community.
Official knows what he's talking about. It looks like
what this does for us is it allows full access, and it's pretty cheap. So for the cost of an iPhone 10, which is just a couple $100, and assuming that you have some sort of machine that can interact with the device, you can do your own testing and verification. Please don't take anything that I give you here today and say it's absolutely correct. There's no doubt about it because Jared said it. Test it, verify, and I'm going to show you.
Well, I appreciate that he said that.
Do some really interesting things and then say there's caveats to that being correct. All right.
You know what's interesting though? He can't talk like that if he's an expert witness on the stand, right? Let me back that up. Like I said, I appreciate that he said that, but I'm like, wait, hang on. You can't come in as an expert and talk like that.
Your own testing and verification. Please don't take anything that I give you here today and say it's absolutely correct. There's no doubt about it.
Interesting.
Test it, verify, and I'm going to show you some really interesting things and then say there's caveats to that being correct.
That's interesting.
Right? So let's get right into it.
Wow.
There's sort of 4 artifacts that I'm going to try to get through here today. My list was like 8, and 4 is even packed. We could talk about the photos for a full few hours if we needed to. But the first one we're going to talk about is the photos on your iOS device, but specific to the facial recognition feature. So I'm going to sort of build from taking a photo and walk you through the point where it says that photo has this person in it. From there, we'll talk about recoverable deleted images on iOS. And this is just sort of an interesting artifact that I wanted to point out because I didn't know about it until very recently.
Okay.
The third one is the personalization portrait, which it's a beast, and it's weird, and it's constantly changing. It's extremely challenging. I spent a full day just writing queries that failed on that thing because it's just difficult. And then the last one that I'm going to do is a file called 3 bars, which allows us to do some Wi-Fi location tracking.
Interesting.
So let's dive right into the photos analysis. So I'm going to sort of build from the point where you take one photo and then show some of the processes of analysis that happen in the background and walk you through to where you're seeing it in your nice gallery on your device. When you open, if you're an iPhone user, you open that Photos application, there's a lot there. It's not just a basic repository of photos and videos anymore. It's intelligent. There's obviously analysis that's happening. It's making smart categories. It's building memories for you. It is telling you a certain person is in a photo. And of course, the location data is something that we always cling to. You're able to keyword search. So you type dog and somehow it produces photos that have dogs in it, right? So
there's also a lot of overlap here, right? With like the Hoslong.
Break apart little pieces of that and hopefully make a little bit of sense or give you something to do more work on. So when you take a photo.
Holy shit.
Right? This is just me pressing the button, and the file system monitoring at the time just runs with changes.
Holy shit.
And then I close the app and it runs with changes.
Crazy.
And depending on if you have Cloud Photo Library turned on,
Oh my
and some of
God.
those other things will depend on exactly what file system changes are happening. But at the end of the day, you take a photo and it writes to a directory. Okay, very, very simple. All right, you can change some settings and make it a little bit different, but at the end of the day, you wrote a file, right? Easy. Let's get into the good stuff.
Oh my God.
So when I go into my photos and I search, like in the top left of the screen there, you see I just typed the letter G, and immediately it populates Green Bay, another location. In the next one down, you see garment, grown up, grass. Well, yeah, that picture is of a dog, and the dog is laying in a bunch of grass. So how's that happening? Moving over, I searched J, and it did some other things. And then on the far right, I did San, and it picked up some photos that are sourced back by the location of San Francisco. But then it also found Santa Claus. So how does it know?
Wait, Santa Claus? Is that how he got involved in this case? Hang on. Okay. Yeah. Also, he said at the end of the day. So while we're here.
But Santa Claus, right? Like, it's really interesting. A lot of analysis and a lot of potential here. So the first piece that I want to talk about is the media analysis .db SQLite database file. This database is essentially grading and scoring and producing results for all the photos that are.
Look, it ends with DB, like DB. Yay!
So once this analysis happens, it will determine if there's a likelihood that there's a human in it, if there's a likelihood that there's a face in the photo, potentially if there's a pet, if it's a high quality photo, or if it's blurry, things like that. When we look at the results table within this database, on the left side, you see asset ID, and you see the number 3. That number 3 is one file. So for that one file, there were results of type 1, type 2,
It's a
type
good idea.
4, type 5, 6, 7,
I'll clip
9,
that.
10.
I will. I'll
Okay.
clip that.
For each one of those results type, there's a blob.
That's a good
blob
idea.
is a binary P list. So when we take those results type numbers and look at the blobs, we can sort of figure out what that file that is being analyzed potentially contains just from here.
Pluto.
So I took the blob and I saved it out as a P list, printed the P list as a text file, and you can see at the bottom with the red star, it says attributes, face bounds, face pose, face position, face quality. So whatever file that was number 3, probably has a face in it because this result is there. So then I repeated that process for all the P lists that I have on my device. Some of those I didn't have data for. I'm not sure what that possibly is, but I didn't have data for some. And I sort of broke out a generic description of what a lot of those results types are, and then built it into a really big, ugly query. If you're awesome at SQL queries, feel free to fix this, but it works. So there it is.
SQLite.
And it just simply breaks apart the different results types. When you look at the results types, you can then sort it to a certain type. So just show me the assets that have been analyzed that have attributes of human bounds or confidence, so that probably have a human in them. The local identifier that you see on the left side is going to match up to the unique identifier listed for the photos in the photos.sqlite database. So this database is doing its own work and doing its own analysis, but it's pushing out information to the photos.sqlite. So how often is this happening? When I took a look at this table, it had happened 2,200, or it had looked at 2,200 files that day. So it's a constant churn of your data to, I guess, come up with what's best. You know, how many times do you take 5 photos at one time and one of them is truly the best? Circle around a year later and they're showing you the memories from that day. They tend to show you the good one, right? So I think that's what's happening here. But how does the keyword search work? So there's a different file called psi.sqlite. And what this file is doing is it is essentially creating strings that equal objects that are found in your photos. This is not user generated in that the user isn't necessarily typing and creating strings, but instead, when I take a photo of a vehicle, it associates that photo with having a vehicle in it So it finds the object. So when you search dog, it finds the photos with dogs. Or
Okay, so I'm going to pause it right here. So honestly, I would rather hear more about their encounter at the Jackalope convention. But the thing is that this presentation, if you will, is seems like it's not going to be what he's going to be testifying to in this trial for BK, right? So yeah, okay. So we gave him a shot. The best part was at the beginning. This is here for anyone that wants to watch it. I will definitely clip the Santa part, but I think we are good on that. So yeah, so there's his I mean, it's a very short, I mean, it's not a bio by any stretch, right? I guess there's like, again, that's not very much. Location data on iOS and Android. Location data, okay, so he was a speaker. And then some blogs. So some of you guys, especially I'm talking to you official in the chat, you might find some of this especially interesting because it looks like he's probably going to be speaking some of your language here. Yeah, this is all coding and development for iOS, but seems to know stuff. Yeah, looks like it. Definitely looks like it. Right. Yeah, no, that was from 2020. James is here. Welcome, James. Yeah, it's irrelevant, right? So, okay. So we have a feel for Jared. We have a feel for Jared, and we have a feel for Heather, right? Because again, they're going to be testifying. So let me put my Squangwin back up though, before I forget. And so now we will go back to where I was freaking out because there is no Rule 403B. Insanely. So far in this one document, we have them spelling their experts' last names wrong and citing a rule that does not exist. Okay, this testimony is clearly relevant, right? And because it says relevant, that's why I was like, did they mean to say Rule 401? Because that's the test for relevancy. So this testimony is clearly relevant to rebut the defendant's allegation that 4 homicides could not be accomplished in the proposed timeline. The defendant is asking that they be allowed to 1, offer testimony that it is impossible for one assailant to commit this crime in the time frame indicated by investigators, and 2, prevent the state from offering rebuttal evidence contradicting that testimony. This flies in the face of fairness. Next, the defendant claims that the house had been vacated and had changed significantly due to the homicide investigation. This is inaccurate and can be explained by Detective Gilbertson through his testimony. There were no structural changes to the residence to prevent the investigators from conducting timed runs, murdering a bunch of people. Any other issues that the defendant has with Gilbertson's proposed testimony are best suited through cross-examination. Detective Gilbertson's rebuttal testimony is prejudicial. Relevant evidence is, he said that in other documents, but it is not unfair. His proposed testimony is not confusing or misleading. It is not an undue delay. It is not a waste of time. So that's Rule 403 there, right? So finally, he's got back to Rule 401. Under Idaho Rules of Evidence 401 and 403, Gilbertson's testimony is relevant and is admissible. Lastly, the defendant claims that this testimony violates the defendant's due process rights because the residence has been demolished. The state notes that the demolition of the house was stipulated, right? I mean, that's true. And that whatever. Okay, keep reading. In addition, Detective Gilbertson's report titled Timed Runs 1122 King was discovered to the defendant on October 12, 2023. The house was demolished on November 28, 2023, over 1 year and 1 month after the homicides. The defendant's team had access to the residence multiple times and for several months prior to its demolition. The defendant had ample opportunity to conduct their own timed runs. The state submits Gilbertson's disclosures comply with Idaho criminal rules, Rule 16b7 and Idaho Rules of Evidence 702, 703, and 705. And then we have Gary Dawson. So again, the defendant disclosed expert opinions claiming that more than one assailant was necessary in order to accomplish the homicides in the suggested timeframe offered by the state. Mr. Dawson will opine that the victim's intoxication levels would have impaired their ability to resist, and for certain victims, as detailed in his report, it would have prevented them from putting up any resistance. We've all been probably waiting to see if this was going to come up, right? This is my personal opinion, think that's going to be a tough one to say for sure. And you better believe, you can just imagine, right, on cross or with a rebuttal expert from the defense, that everybody's tolerance is different. How are they going to know for sure? I guess they will have tested their blood alcohol. But then, see, I'm walking through this in my head, right? When they would have tested them would have been way after the homicides, right? Because it would have been after the 911 call. So Interesting. So in other words, if you're relying on maybe based on how many drinks somebody said they saw them have, oh man. I mean, we know they were drinking, right? But like now we're getting down to expert testimony that's going to have to say, at what point are you too impaired to like resist a stabber, right? That's going to be tough. That's going to be really tough. And it's going to take, dude, I would fight the fuck out of that. I'm sure the defense will. I think it's going to take I don't know how they're going to get there in this case. I really don't. Especially because of the delay. So, wow, though, I'm shocked. I'm like, in other words, I guess people thought that this would probably be important, but like, it never occurred to me that anyone would attempt to try to prove this because it seems like impossible to me. These opinions support the argument that less time would have been needed to commit the homicides. Oh, I see. They're saying that the reason it could have been only one person is because they were drunk, the kids. The state submits Dawson's disclosure complies with all the shit that it's supposed to. Wow. And then David Middleman, they're just incorporating. They're not actually really responding there. The state has made a good faith effort to comply with the court's scheduling order, instruction, and applicable Idaho rules. On December 18th, 2024, the state filed 25 expert disclosures. The defendant quickly filed a motion to compel, requesting sanctions. We heard all this, right? In the hearing, court did not set any additional deadlines, but stated supplements would be reasonably allowed. They're repeating themselves. They already said all this. To suggest that the state gambled with disclosure of expert testimony in order to reap a tactical advantage is unsupported and outrageous. Oh boy. Oh boy. Regardless, from the date of this response filing, the parties have 4 months and 25 days until the start of trial. The defendant has ample opportunity to review and respond to the state's disclosures. The state has allowed extensions for the defendant to file additional experts. The defendant has not sufficiently demonstrated any actual prejudice related to this issue because there is none. Wow. Santa's claws are coming off. Oh, I guess this is actually Jennings. It's Jennings. Well, Jennings, hey, Ashley Jennings, you know, it would be great if you could learn, like, I'm not an attorney and I know that there is no rule for 403B, right? I know that there's no rule 403B. And I also know that rule 403 was not relevant where you cited it. And that rule 401 was the one you were looking for. Additionally, you could maybe think about spelling your own experts' names correctly. So there's that. Wow. Okay. Next up, guys. Next up. Bushy eyebrows time. Y'all ready? Read slower, but you're slowing it down to 0.75 speed, right? It's not my normal speech pattern. I can try, but I can't promise anything because it's not how I talk. It's just tough, right? It'd be like saying, can you please speak with a Spanish accent? Like, I can try, but it's not going to go very far. Okay, I don't think that Alessi's still here, but we talked about this at the beginning of the stream with the bushy eyebrows. So getting him up to speed. Okay, so the court should find the descriptions of the intruder, including the bushy eyebrows, admissible. The state incorporates its previously filed state's motion to eliminate text messages and testimony, as well as the 911 call into this response. Facts. All right, let's see if we get anything new here. On November 13th, 2022, sometime before 4:19 a.m., DM observed a person inside her residence, which she shared with her 4 roommates at 1122 King Road. DM placed several phone calls and sent several text messages to her roommates. The only roommate who responded is BF. Was BF. They had 2 short phone conversations, 24 seconds and 41 seconds. Okay, so now we're getting the length of the other phone conversation. let me write that down so I can update that in my file, because I have an edited version of this with all the things. So they're offering more information. So we had the initial one from the state that left out a bunch of shit. Then we had the defense one that added new shit, but left out shit from the state's filing, which pissed me off. But now they're giving us the 24 seconds for that other phone call. So I'm going to write that down so I can add it to my thing. Okay. Within those phone calls and text messages, DM relayed to BF she saw a person in the residence wearing black, and he had on a ski mask that covered his forehead and mouth. On November 13th at approximately 11:56 a.m., oh my God, we're missing a space here. What is, y'all? A 911 call was placed from 1122 King Road for a reported unresponsive female. The caller stated one of the roommates was not waking up. The caller stated, oh, and they saw some man in their house last night. Moscow PD responded to the scene. The same day, at approximately 12:09 p.m., Officer Nunez took a statement from DM on the scene outside of the house. DM told the officer she saw a male not insanely tall. Dear God. Wearing all black and a mask that was just covering his forehead and mouth. In other words, so that the person can see, like as opposed to a mask that covers your eyes too, and then you just can't see anything. Does that even exist? I have questions. Later, DM repeated the description. He was a little bit taller than me. I couldn't really see much of him, and I'm almost positive he was wearing a full black outfit, and he had this mask that was just over his forehead and his mouth. DM gave the description a third time, repeating he had a mask. He was an inch or two taller than her. Wow. And he was a basketball player, kind of skinny. This is crazy. And a voice she did not recognize. The same day at approximately 1:47 p.m., DM was interviewed at the Moscow Police Department by Detective Mallory. During this interview, DM reported she saw a white male she did not know, maybe my height, a few inches taller, skinny, athletic built, wearing all black, wearing this mask that covers just his forehead and here. She must have been pointing or gesturing to her mouth. I know, Franks, and I've offered them a million. I'm like, guys, I will proofread for you. It is crazy. Defendant's exhibit. Okay, sorry. Regarding his height, she reported, I'm 5'10", so he's probably around 6 feet. She reported, I don't remember what his eyes looked like either. I didn't recognize eyes, but definitely a white guy. How can you tell that, though, if this came up in the Zachary Hughes case as well, right? Because he had on like a mask and like a hood or a hat. There was a lot of debate about that. And like, you know, one of the detectives was like, yeah, he's definitely white. And I was like, they tried to show in a picture where you can see and you could not see, right? But point being, if they're all covered up and they've got a mask that's covering all their stuff except for their eyes, how do you know it's a white guy? 4 days later, on November 17th, DM was interviewed by Idaho State Police Detective Gooch and Sergeant Blaker. DM gave a detailed recounting of what she did on Saturday. I'm trying to read as slow as I can, guys. Until she went to bed at approximately 3:20 a.m. on, like, this is slow for me, you guys know. 3:20 a.m. on Sunday, November 13th, 2022. It's weird though, because see, my brain thinks like, I sound weird to myself because the way that I think to myself in my brain and talk is like fast. So like, I don't know. Okay. I'm going to keep trying. Sometime between 4 a.m. and 4:20 a.m., DM woke up and heard a male's voice, a voice she did not recognize, say, "It's okay. I'm going to help you." DM opened her door and saw, and then looks like it's taken from her interview, someone, because from my mind, it's like I was almost wearing these like blurry glasses. Oh dear. Like it's fuzzy and cloudy, but it was like a figure of someone wearing all black. And it was like they had a ski mask that was covering their forehead and their chin and mouth. But I could see all I remember was seeing their eyebrows. And I don't remember what their eyes looked like, but I remember their eyebrows. I don't remember the color the eyebrows were. I just remember like bushy eyebrows. That's all I could think about. So here's what I will say about this. Remember how we learned in one of the defense filings, I guess it was the bushy eyebrows filing, right? About all the pictures of eyebrows on her wall. This is giving a lot for them to work with on cross. And here's why. Because she's very fixated on the eyebrows, right? Like if you've got a mask that covers everything but the eyes and eyebrows, right? I mean, like, it's reasonable to me, right, that in the dark, could you see someone's eye color? No. Could you see someone's eyebrow color? No. But the fact that you couldn't see those things, but yet you really noticed the eyebrows is interesting, because it's like either there was enough light where you could see the eyebrows, and if so, why didn't you see the eyes? Or there wasn't enough light for any of it, and this was all in your mind because you were drunk and you had the eyebrows on the walls, and it's how your brain remembered it after they kept asking you for more details and you couldn't give them any, right? Either way, there's a problem with this, in my view. And then especially this part, that's all I could think about. Again, thinking back to like the whole thing, they said there's all those drawings on her walls with the eyebrows, bushy eyebrows. You know, you guys see where I'm like, that's interesting. Very interesting. DM described the male as not skinny tone. Why does it say not? Because she described him as skinny tone, the basketball kind of type. They added the word not. I'm just shaking my head. I'm going to refrain from goading. It completely changes the context when you just add words in, like something is or isn't, right? By adding the word not. DM stated she is 5'10" tall, so thought the male was around 5'10", and then 6 feet, somewhere around there. She stated the male was approximately 3 feet from where she was standing. I would say about 3 feet from what I remember. Again, that could be off because I obviously probably still a little bit drunk. I just woke up. I don't remember fully. Oh, God. And I've said this before, and I'll say this again, that it was very clear from what we'd already seen so far that DM did not want them to be relying on her as a witness. Like, it seems like she wasn't like, it's not like she was drunk and whatever, and like trying to pretend she's a great witness and please rely on me and I can tell you everything and I'm fully credible. It was clear that she, from the get-go, is like, I don't know, I don't remember, it's blurry, I was tired, I woke up, I was drunk, right? Which I appreciate, because that's way better than somebody who didn't see something and then tries to make it seem for sure like they did, right? But it's also clear that with all of the subsequent interviews and stuff, you know, they keep asking her for more, tell me more. And it's like, it's one of those problems that we have with this, right? Because it's like, she already told you what she knows. This is true with anybody, right? When they're getting interviewed like this, especially if they don't have more to tell. And it's like, and you can see how with each subsequent interview, things are added on, right? There's more details, or there's new details, or different details, or whatever, you know? So I get the impression that she did not want to be their star witness. I'm sure she does not want to testify and get ripped apart on cross. And I feel for her being like, hey, I'm not the one you should be relying on here. I'm probably still drunk or whatever, right? You know what I mean? Franks, I bet Kohberger regrets picking a house with an eyebrow fix it. That's fucking hilarious. Okay, so again, she described the male. I know he looked at me because I could see his eyebrows. I think I saw one eyebrow. I don't know why or how. See, I appreciate this. It's not her fault, guys, right? Like, it's not her fault that she's in this position. It is the state's fault that they are relying on her, and this is their star, quote unquote, eyewitness, right? DM recounted calling and texting her roommate BF, and she discussed with BF that there was someone in the house wearing all black and a ski mask. Pages from the transcript not included in the defendant's exhibit. That's what they're citing. Sorry. Okay. DM conveyed to the interviewers that the facts didn't fully make sense to her and she didn't know how to explain everything. Yeah. I feel bad for her, honestly, being in this position. I really do. Detective Gooch explained to DM that the important thing was to tell only the things she knew were true. That's the most important. And then she agreed. DM agreed. Detective Gooch acknowledged DM's trauma, and then DM confirmed. Detective Gooch and Corporate Blaker confirmed the facts from DM's memory. Again, DM reiterated she saw a male figure in the hallway, approximately 3 feet from her. He was holding something. Oh, and there's a new part there. He was wearing all black clothes. His forehead was covered. He was wearing a mask. She remembered his eyebrows. And now we're back to plural. Blaker asked what was covering his face, and DM stated, I don't know. Weird looking ski mask. It wasn't like the regular ski mask with like eyes. And, you know, because I saw his eyebrows and I think I saw his nose and like this part of his face, but I don't know. And again, she's gesturing and they're not telling us what she's gesturing to. Detective Gooch asked DM if she knew what a balaclava was and showed her a picture. In response, in addressing whether she could see the male's mouth, DM stated, no, and I don't remember if I saw it. Like, I don't remember if I saw his nose, but I saw eyebrows. And I don't remember his eyes. I just feel like I can see eyebrows. But I mean, that could be it. Wow. I mean, that would make sense why his forehead was covered in this part. Y'all, this is sad to me. In so many ways, this is sad to me. It's interesting that they showed her a picture of a balaclava and she doesn't seem to be like, yeah, that's the type of mask, right? Let's take a look because there's different types of balaclavas. How is this person seeing though? Okay. I mean, there's this one where just the eyes, I mean, again, there's just different types. So now how is that different from a ski mask? They're basically the same thing. So, agreed here. Yeah, the room had drawn eyebrows on the wall. Yep. How does she even know it's a man? There's literally no way that given her description, she could know if it's a man or woman. And also remember, she said she knew he was white. There's no way she could say that. So the thing that doesn't make any sense is the mask that she's describing can only either be a ski mask or a balaclava. And they're, from what we just looked at, they're the same thing. It's just different name, right? So they showed her a balaclava, which is like the same as a ski mask, right? Same thing. And now she's walking that back. I don't remember if I saw it. So now this is interesting though. She's almost walking back the mask to where she just saw the eyebrows. That's what's so interesting, right? I just saw eyebrows. So it seems like maybe before the mask could have been a way for her in her mind or whatever, or two detectives being pressed upon it to explain why she only saw eyebrows and then wearing a mask, right? But like even right here, I mean, this is her trying to explain why she only remembers the eyebrows. I mean, that would make sense why the forehead was covered and this part of his face was covered. But yet they showed you the picture of the balaclava and you're not like, oh, that's it. This is blowing my mind. Because the thing is like that mask should have been like, yeah, that's the type of mask, right? But she's not. Again, I appreciate that she's willing to change. Again, the only consistency in her testimony or her statements is the inconsistency, right? I think that was Kane's point. Yes. But I appreciate at least that she's being honest to a certain extent, at least in the sense that she's not trying to make it seem like she knows what the fuck's going on. Because now she's like, this is a clear change. Like, we're not identifying the mask and all this. Like, this is crucial. And this is very different from what she said before. So I appreciate that. I mean, again, it seems almost like honesty to the extent she's able to recall whatever it is being drunk. That, again, some witnesses, they really want to just look a certain way to law enforcement. And, you know, we've seen that in every case, right? So I appreciate that she's willing to just be all over the place with this, as opposed to like lying. Right. Absolutely. That's absolutely true. We don't know what type of pressure is being put upon her. Yeah. The investigators what is adult game? D-O-L-T? I don't know what that is. The investigators inquired if DM could provide a composite for an artist. Are you joking? Why are they even, the fact that they asked that question is insane to me, given what she's described. She saw nothing but the eyebrows. I can't believe they asked her that. Thank God she responded no. She says, no, I don't remember what his eyes looked like. I don't know what his nose looked like. I just remember the eyebrows. I don't know exactly what the eyebrows looked like at all, really. I just remember thinking like eyebrows. Holy fuck. Yeah, bushy, but that's all. Like, I don't remember the shape. I don't remember like the color. I just remember like bushy eyebrows. That's the only thing I can remember. Wow. So then we have another interview. She reported she heard a man's voice and it wasn't Ethan's. It was like, okay, I'm going to help you. DM stated she saw an all black figure about my height, maybe a few inches taller, skinny build, wearing a mask. She described, I don't remember if it was just like one eyebrow or two, but it was just like this bushy eyebrow. And then they're referencing the text here. There's a guy in all black. That's her text to BF. Again, describing the ski mask. I couldn't see any of his hair. Oh, so we're getting some new information here that we didn't have before. I couldn't see any of his hair, but I remember just like seeing like, so this is the conversation that happened before the text message string where they are talking about the mask. I just remember seeing like, it was like almost rectangular, not the circle ones. What, the eye holes or whatever, or what is rectangular? It was rectangular because I remember seeing like, just like, I don't know how to explain it, just like this. And again, she's gesturing. We don't know what she's gesturing. Maybe I'd be able to see like a cross. What? I think that's supposed to be a cross, like all one word, not a cross like Jesus. But I don't remember seeing his eyes, but I feel like his eyes were there. I could just see like an eyebrow. I feel like that's how I know he saw me. Because I could see his eyebrow. Like, if I can see his eyebrow, he can see me. Oh, boy. Wow. Wow, 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 wow. Oh, my God. She reiterated. From what I remember, I think he was just, like, walking past that little wall and going towards the kitchen. Towards the kitchen. And I don't know. Like, I just remember seeing an eyebrow. If one thing is clear, that's the one thing. I don't know why I just see one. It was like just like one bushy eyebrow. I don't remember the color, like the full shape. I just remember it being bushy. No wonder the state this is so important to them, because this is the thing that she just keeps talking about. She's fixated on this eyebrow, which again, given the eyebrows in her room, is interesting. But clearly, if you're trying to build up her credibility, where you hang your hat on is the eyebrow. Not enough to count as an identification for any other case I can think of. She described his clothing again, stating the male was wearing long black sleeves, black pants, and black boots. And, you know, again, it's interesting because earlier in one of the quotations from her that they provided, she said, like, I think he was wearing all black or something. It was, and it stuck out to me because I was like, oh, so now she's not sure about the all black, right? Anyway. At the end of the interview, DM drew the mask for the interviewer. Oh, I wish we could see that. While drawing, she gave a consistent description of the mask and noted the eyebrows. I don't remember if I saw one or two. Like, it was just weird. Yeah, weird is a good way to describe it, I would say. On December 20th, 2022, Bryan Kohberger was arrested. The following day, 47 days after her first interview, DM was interviewed by ISP detectives Joe Lake and Gary Tolleson in Coeur d'Alene. DM was asked about Bryan Kohberger. DM was asked, have you seen a picture of Mr. Kohberger? She said, yeah, I looked him up today when I found out. Regarding what picture she saw, she stated, I've seen the mugshot, one with the best thing, I think. The interviewer asked, this Bryan Kohberger, the person you saw in the mugshot, is that the person you saw in your house? And she responded, I have no clue. From what I remember, I just remember seeing this figure that was like not fat, obviously, but more of like the skinnier tone build and some mask on. I don't know what the mask exactly was. This is crazy, guys. But when I thought about it, it was just like covering here and here. I don't know if it was covering his mouth, his nose, or below. So now she's walking that back about the mouth and the nose. This is insane. I just remember knowing that he was white, but I don't know, but I didn't know how he was white. Yeah, that's the point I was making, because how the fuck would you have known? I just knew he was. This is crazy. And this knowing there's like, I knew that he had looked at me because of the bushy eyebrow. That's all I remember. But I have no idea what he looked like. And I don't like, when I looked at this picture or at his picture, nothing came back to me at all. So that like, I don't know. I feel like if I saw that, my mind would be like, oh yeah, that's him. But just, I don't remember it all. Well, I will say this much. The fact that she's like, this answer right here, this direct question, is that the person you saw in your house? You know how much they were hoping she was going to say, yep, that's him. And she could have. And some people would have. I will tell you, again, going back to the Zachary Hughes case, that neighbor across the street did exactly that. There's no way she could have actually identified the defendant. And she did the thing where she pointed her finger and was like, that's him. There's no way she could have possibly have seen that. No way. Absolutely no way. And for a bazillion reasons I won't even go into, because I'm sure not all of you guys follow that trial. But anyway, my point being, the point is that there's some people who, even if they don't recognize the person, because the person's has been charged with the crime, they will say, yep, that's them. I appreciate her answer being, I have no clue. That is huge for the defense, I feel like. I mean, wow. Regarding DM telling BF the male had a big nose, DM stated, all I remember, but I don't remember big nose at all, like at all. That's like, all I remember is like some bushy eyebrow and all black and some sort of mask, but it wasn't like one of those circle ski masks. I don't even know what that means. So she said that other thing about it being rectangular. What the fuck is she talking about? One thing that hasn't been brought up a lot is, did it cover all of the hair? Because in the balaclavas and the ski masks, right? The vast majority, you see, like they cover the whole head, just not the eyes. They cover everything but the eyes. So, I mean, when I think of a rectangular mask, I'm thinking of like a surgical mask or whatever, right? But it's honestly, there's really no point because it's just all over the map, right? I'm just saying it is noteworthy that she didn't positively identify it as being a ski mask or a balaclava. So we have a new school friend here, Truth and Justice Crime with Anna. Welcome, welcome. Happy to have you here as part of the school crew. Glad you're here. We love it. We love all of our school friends, new and old. We're going to call you Truth for short here, as I put in a command here. But welcome, welcome, welcome. So it's just interesting. I mean, to me, I was at least expecting her to be like, yeah, the balaclava is what the type of mask, because that fits the descriptions. So for her to be like, oh, that's not it, is just mind blowing to me. Okay. So then on May 15th, 183 days after the DM's first interview, she testified at the grand jury. Regarding November 13th, DM testified she woke up around 4 a.m. to noises, music, Murphy, talking and or singing. Singing? Okay. She testified she opened the door and heard a man's voice say, it's okay, I'm going to help you. Well, the singing, so we know Xana was on TikTok. I wonder if maybe, I don't know. I'm just trying to think of what the fuck that could be. It's okay, I'm going to help you. And I didn't know who the man's voice was. She testified she opened her door again and saw a figure in all black, which I believe was a person. As opposed to what? Hold on. So instead of male or female, white or black, height, whatever, now we're like, which I believe was a person, as opposed to what? A ghost, a demon, a horse, an owl? What? You know, and you have to think about it too. So she's testifying before the grand jury. So maybe it's like maybe this is really more akin to what she thought at the time, right? And that's the best she can get, is like, I believe it was a person. What? A vampire, a werewolf, an alien? Okay, but then, oh, never mind. I'm going to take that back. I knew the person was white. So you believe they're a person, but you know that they're white. I don't know how, but I just knew it. Knew it was male. I think I knew that because of the voice. The person was around my height or a few inches tall. I'm shaking my head and I just want to reiterate. I am not frustrated with Dylan. I'm frustrated with the state for relying on this. This is sad and pathetic, and I think it's not fair to Dylan. And I appreciate that she's not trying to make things up. Like, she's got to know her testimony is not making any type of sense. I appreciate that she's not trying to make it seem more believable, as we have seen with other witnesses, like quote unquote eyewitnesses, right? Again. And then I knew his build wasn't like scrawny and he wasn't fat. So I figured it was like the basketball toned lean build. Regarding what the person was wearing, DM testified there was like I guess it's a typo. From what I think I remember, it was like a black mask, almost like a ski mask, but not. It just covered the head. Just covered the head. And then maybe up to the mouth, maybe more. This is, wow. I can't remember if it covered just the chin, the mouth, or the nose or lower. It's literally all over the map. And then Needson Z says, I agree. It's sad that they're relying on this because it's not. Yeah. Yep. And it's really unfair to her. It's just really unfair to her. Can you imagine? Can you imagine being this young college student who was drunk, who said from the get-go, I don't know, like, and then they're relying on you like this? DM testified the clothing was all black. She testified, well, the thing I can really remember was something about a bushy eyebrow. I don't remember seeing anything else, just something about a bushy eyebrow. So they're saying that it did not. So DM's statements are independently reliable as law enforcement did not employ a witness identification procedure triggering a Manson Baker. So what that is like when they, well, I think what they're going to talk about is like the lineup of photos, right? So let's just see here. Yep, lineups. Called it. In State v. Hoisington, witnesses were shown a 6-photo lineup. Again, 6-person lineup, photographic lineup. But what happened with Dylan is even worse, though. Because it was only one person versus 6. It's more fair if there's 6 people. Right? How are they trying to say that this is better? Or what that they did was better? The United States Supreme Court has held that due process requires the exclusion of identification evidence if the police suggestiveness. Okay. So I guess because what they're saying is they didn't show her a picture of Bryan Kohberger. They asked her if she saw his picture and she said she had seen it from the mugshot. And that's their way around this whole thing with the balancing test. Interesting. Okay. I see. Although didn't they end up showing her a picture after that? Okay, we're not going to read all this. Again, all they're saying is like it's suggestive to show them a photo. And again, the point here would be from the state's point of view that they didn't show her a photo. They asked if she'd seen one on her own accord, basically. Yeah, I don't think it is legal. So that's why I'm saying, like, I believe we saw this in a previous filing. It was referenced that she was, or it came up in the hearing maybe, right? That she was shown a photo, right? Didn't that came up? That came up. So it must have, like, okay. Here's the thing. The defense will respond to this and we'll learn more. But they're saying that they first asked her if she just had seen the photo, like on her own accord, which is different than being shown one, right? In terms of the law is concerned, right? Where they present you with one themselves. Right. That's right. She looked at the picture herself. But I just remember it being it was in those hearings, like the January 23rd and whatnot, right? They talked about her. Maybe they said she saw a picture of the defendant. Now I'd have to go back and check for sure. Was it that they said she saw a picture of the defendant or did they say she was shown? I thought it was she was shown. But anyway, here, what the state is saying is that they didn't show again, it's possible that they did show her afterwards. Where we're at chronologically here is the first thing that happened was they asked if she had seen a picture like on the internet. And she said, yeah, I saw the mugshot or whatever. And that based off of that, and that would probably be the point, right? It was based off of that they were like, and is that the person you saw in the house? And she was like, what did she say? Like, I don't know, or I'm not sure. So That gets the difference being that they didn't present her with something, right? Welcome, Ariel. Okay, so we're on page 10. Let me go up to that part again with the picture. Hang on. We'll come right back to this. Okay. Let's just read this part again. They asked, have you seen a picture of Mr. Kohberger? She responded, yeah, I looked him up today when I found out. Regarding what picture she saw, she stated, I've seen the mugshot one with the vest thing, I think. The interviewer asked, this Bryan Kohberger, the person that you saw in the mugshot, is that the person you saw in your house? And she said, I have no clue. So the thing is that what I'm wondering is that the only instance of being asked about a photo, or after that, did they also provide her with a photo? Because my recollection from that hearing, which I've watched like a bazillion times, was like that she was shown a picture. And honestly, I think it was Ashley Jennings that said it, if I recall. But she gets things wrong all the time. So that could have been her misspeaking. I mean, for all we know. Oh, yeah, it was definitely everywhere. Yeah. Okay, in the case at hand, on 4 separate occasions, prior to Bryan Kohberger being arrested, she gave consistent descriptions. That is highly debatable, of the male she saw. So, but they're saying, here's what's consistent. White, male, wearing all black. That wasn't, like I pointed out earlier, there was one statement she made where that was less, she was less sure about that. Okay, state. Number 4, a few inches taller than DM, wearing a mask, skinny, athletic build, toned, voice, not a voice she recognized. During 3 of those interviews, she also consistently described the male's eyebrows. 5 times she used the term bushy to describe the eyebrows. Okay, regarding identification, after Bryan Kohberger was arrested, DM was interviewed. She relayed that she saw a mugshot of Bryan Kohberger. It says of the Bryan Kohberger. Oh, God. Of Bryan Kohberger on the internet. Detective Lake asked DM, is this Bryan Kohberger the person? And this is literally the part we just read, right? And she said, I have no clue. And this is just literally repeating what we already read. The questioning of DM is not a witness identification. There's no law enforcement procedure employed to suggest identification. Right. Again, the difference being if they presented her with a photo, it would be very, very, very different because they didn't present and that they would know that. And part of what I'm saying is this. It's like that plausible deniability, right? They would know that if she saw a picture, because of course it was everywhere, but they don't present her with one, then that whatever statement she makes when asked about it is admissible. And I'm sure they were hoping again that she would say, yep, that's him, right? And that they would still be able to be like, well, we didn't suggest it because we didn't present her with anything. You see what I mean, guys? It's one of those, it's like not a loophole, but it's not a loophole. The way the law works with this is like they would have to present her with a picture, right? And if they didn't present her with one, but she saw one online, it's different as far as that goes. Most importantly, there was no identification by DM. Well, that's the state saying that right there, guys, right? Remember in the hearing again on like January 23rd when, dude, Hipler-Fraudo asked Ashley Jennings, are you using this for identification or are you using this for timeline? And she said both. Importantly, there was no identification by DM. After seeing a picture of Bryan Kohberger, DM could not say he was the male that she saw on November 13th. So what the fuck is going on here? I mean, this is clear from what we're reading, but why did they try to say, why did Ashley Jennings say they were going to use this for identification? DM's multiple descriptions of the male were based on her own recollection and were not the result of suggestive identification procedures employed by law enforcement. Thus, the test is inapplicable. Yeah, and Ariel, if you're saying it's the same thing, in your opinion, if what you're referencing is it may as well be the same thing because she looked it up and saw it versus them providing her with it, I totally agree. It literally, the only difference is the physical act of providing. Like the difference would be that she on her own volition looked it up versus them handing her a picture. And I totally understand what you mean. And I get it. Like I feel the same way, but like, and yes, this is exactly what I've been saying. Shout out to Dylan for saying she didn't know if BK was the guy she saw instead of just saying yes. Yep. I literally said the same thing a few minutes ago because we see witnesses all the time will do that. They will say it is. Yeah, 100% with you on that. Shout out to her for a lot of this because I appreciate her candor, that she's unsure, and for not identifying him and many other things. Okay, even if the court applies the Manson-Biggers test, the totality of the circumstances presented in this case substantially outweigh any suggestiveness present. Even if the court employs the Manson-Biggers balancing test to the facts of the case, the court should find her descriptions, including bushy eyebrows, are reliable and admissible. First, regarding opportunity to view, DM stated she was approximately 3 feet from the male when she saw him. DM was able to get enough of a view of the male to determine his outfit and the details regarding the mask he was wearing. Ski-type mask without, well, no. She walked that back, though, when you showed her a picture of a ski mask without circular holes, but covering his forehead and mouth. Are they going to come back to the rectangle part? Because that is especially fascinating. They're leaving that out. They're saying without circular holes, and they're leaving out the part about the rectangle. DM also determined the male was holding an item, although she was not able to determine what that item was. And that was only said in one of the statements and not the rest about holding something. Second, regarding degree of attention, DM's statements indicate during the time of her observations, she was only able to see the eye and nose area. This means the only discernible features on the male would have been the nose and eyes. No, but plenty of times she said she couldn't see the nose. Oh my God, this is such a mess. On November 17th, DM states, I just remember like bushy eyebrows. That's all I could think about. Yeah, we know that. That's for sure. Defendant notes DM's artwork and drawings found on her bedroom wall, which focuses on eyebrows and eyes. This only proves that DM would have a degree of attention to this facial characteristic, thus reinforcing her reliability. Defendant states Mr. Kohberger does not have bushy eyebrows. That's subjective, right? The state intends to produce a photograph of Bryan Kohberger taken from his phone. Oh, only hours after the homicides at 10:31 a.m. Oh boy. Whether or not Bryan Kohberger can be described as having bushy eyebrows is a factual. I mean, I do agree. That is for sure a fact for the jury. It's subjective. Third, regarding the accuracy of the description, Kohberger matches DM's descriptions. Although, I mean, of course, they could fit like 50 bazillion people on the planet. But anyway. And then they're referencing the driver's license. Fourth, regarding the level of certainty, DM texted BF a description. And immediately after her observations, she was interviewed on 5 separate occasions. And she provided grand jury testimony. DM without fail gave the same description. It's really not. It varies a lot. And not her fault, again. Which in and of itself indicates her level of I automatically, you guys, I automatically edited this to uncertainty. It says certainty. Let me read this again. Which in and of itself indicates her level of certainty. See, I was saying uncertainty because she's uncertain. I mean, she says so, her own words. On November 17th, she relayed to investigators she was suffering from trauma and was unsure of what is real or not. She admitted many times she was probably still intoxicated. Quote, I don't know if I was still drunk. Probably was. I don't know for sure. I was really asleep. I like woke up out of nowhere and I was obviously probably still a little bit drunk. I just woke up. I don't remember fully. Admittedly, DM made statements such as, I believe I was also very drunk. I don't know how much of this was real. Like, I don't know if my mind was like doing whatever. I think what she means is playing tricks on her. That's my interpretation of that. I don't know any of it. Like half of the stuff, I don't know if it's a dream or if it's real. I just have no clue. If I were on the jury, I would just not, again, no offense to her. I appreciate her honesty. I would not rely on her testimony. I would be like, that poor girl, get her off the stand, get her some therapy, and let's move on. What real evidence do you have? This is sad. And honestly, if I were on the jury, also, I would interpret this as desperation. That's how I would interpret this for the state to present this witness. But the investigators told DM they only wanted DM to focus on what she knew was true. That's the most important. DM agreed. After this, she provided the same descriptions with absolutely no variance. DM also made it clear that eyebrows are the feature she most clearly remembered. It is evident by the degree of detail she provided about the events leading up, during, and after the crimes that she provided reliable descriptions. Yep. And that's true. That's a great point. She was on, of course, she was on her phone. I mean, and the thing is, like, we could go through and pick apart. I mean, she was on her phone. Lastly, regarding the length of time between the crime and the identification, while there are multiple consistent descriptions, it was not possible for DM to provide identification because the male was completely covered with only nose and eyes visible. After weighing the above factors, the court should hold that under the totality of the circumstances, DM's descriptions of the male, especially bushy eyebrows, especially, again, that's the thing that they want, are reliable and thus admissible. And you know why? Because for the state has to recognize that the build, the height, and being a white male are, yeah, like everybody. That, again, they're hanging their hat on that bushy eyebrows as if that's supposed to set it apart when it's subjective. And even if you were to say, like, how many people have bushy eyebrows, I'm sure a ton. Like, and again, bushy is subjective. There's so many problems. It's just not even worth listing them all, sadly. DM statements are relevant and admissible. Under Idaho Rule of Evidence 401, at least they got the rule number right this time. Evidence is relevant if it has the tendency, and we've read this a billion times. The defendant argues that the bushy eyebrows is not relevant. Yeah, that's not the strongest argument. I think there's a bazillion other arguments against it. I don't know about the relevancy part, but that is not the case. DM is the only living person who saw the person responsible. And again, there's that pressure on her, right? Who saw the person responsible for the 4 homicides at 112 King Road. Her description of this individual, including characteristics such as bushy eyebrows, has the tendency to make a fact, i.e. the identity. She literally, so now they're saying she is making an identification? You've got to be kidding me. You've got to be kidding me. Remember how we were just talking about this and how I was like, yeah, Ashley Jennings in the hearing was like, yeah, we're using it for identity and for timeline. And then it was, I freaked out because I was like, just earlier in this document, it's like, it's not for identification. And now it's back to, yes, it's for identification. Oh my God. Oh my God. More probable than it would be without the evidence. This fact is of consequence to determining whether Bryan Kohberger was the same male DM saw that night. The person response, dude, that's, oh my God. Responsible for the homicide is a central question before the jury. This evidence is relevant. Defendant then argues, pursuant to Idaho Rules of Evidence 403, this relevant evidence should be excluded because its probative value is substantially outweighed by the danger of unfair prejudice and confusion of the issues. What is clear from the defendant's filing is that the defendant doesn't like this piece of the state's evidence. This is exactly what they said about the knife. DM's description of the male having bushy eyebrows, and therefore would like to keep this piece of evidence from the jury. It's sad that they actually think that this should be convincing to anybody on the jury. I don't see how any person on any jury anywhere would find this compelling. I don't think it's possible. I don't think it's possible. However, his arguments are without merit. As shown above, DM gave consistent descriptions of the male she saw at the time in question. One of the consistent descriptions is that the male had bushy eyebrows. That description is clear. It is not confusing and therefore will not confuse a jury. The fact that this description may or may not implicate the defendant is not a reason to keep the fact from the jury's consideration. It is not reasonable to believe the jury will convict the defendant based on the status of his kept or unkept eyebrows. That's rude. While this fact is prejudicial, again, repeating himself, relevant evidence tends to be, it is not unfair. That's offensive though, right? Like, are they suggesting that if you're a dude or a woman and you've got bushy eyebrows by somebody else's opinion, which again is subjective, that you should like alter your eyebrows? Like, that's really, it's just offensive to me. DM's testimony will be based on her personal knowledge. Yeah, and as far as the Indeed activity, you know, again, somebody commented on one of the other live streams that they had a good point, which was that she'd been looking on Instagram right before that, and it's entirely possible that because the apps both start with the letters IN and they would be right next to each other, that potentially she accidentally clicked on Indeed instead of Instagram, which is could be, right? Only, you know, she'll have to testify to that. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sure she'll be asked about that, and we'll find out. But that definitely makes sense as something that could happen. You accidentally click the wrong app. I click the wrong apps accidentally all the time. Yeah, I mean, and the other thing is besides seeing bushy eyebrows, many times in all of the statements we just read from DM, she's like, I just keep thinking about the bushy eyebrows, or that's the thing that stands out in my mind, right? I just keep coming back to the bushy eyebrows, stuff like that. That is so fast. Like, to me, that's really significant because it's less about her seeing them visually and more like that's what she remembers, right? Which is a completely different thing. Okay, the defendant's reliance on Idaho Rules of Evidence 602 is illogical. Wow. Under Idaho Rules of Evidence 602, a witness may testify to a matter only if evidence is introduced sufficient to support a finding that the witness has personal knowledge of the matter. Evidence to prove personal knowledge may consist of the witness's own testimony. DM will testify based on her recollection, well, of what she observed on November 13th, which will include her observations of the male in the residence having bushy eyebrows. DM is competent to testify. Well, I don't think anyone's saying she's not competent. Again, from legal standards, right, guys? Like, you know. Oh, interesting. The defendant has already tried an appeal at challenging DM's competency. Wow. In previous filings, the court has held defendant's own proffer establishes that DM's accounts were remarkably consistent throughout her multiple interviews with law enforcement. Right. The defense will be able, so fodder for cross-examination, right? The defense will be able to probe into her capacity and opportunity for observation, her attention, interest, and distraction at trial. The jury is perfectly capable of assessing DM's credibility by weighing her testimony, its consistency, or alternatively, any deficiencies elicited through cross-examination. And then in conclusion, it's relevant and admissible. And there's the picture. I actually had not seen this yet. Twiz told me about it right before I went live. I had not seen this yet, actually. So this is the picture from 10 something the next morning or whatever. And that's definitely a shower. And it's definitely missing a shower curtain. What's he got? Like headphones on, looks like. Looks like he just took a shower, maybe, or has gel in his hair. It's a nice dress shirt. And a thumbs up. And the state has included this because they're trying to show the eyebrows being bushy. One thing I will say, though, is if he just did take a shower, because if you look at the hair, right? If you imagine somebody just getting out of the shower and the hair being a good example, you know, for anybody, regardless of what hair color you have, if you just take a shower, you know, y'all, I'm sure can back me up on it. Like your hair is going to look darker than it is until it's dry, right? So think about this. So with the eyebrows, right? For anybody's eyebrows, same. Like if their hair is still wet, then their eyebrows are probably still wet. They're going to look darker and therefore more obvious than they would when they're dry. So and I'm saying that because like a picture at a point where his hair is clearly not wet, and maybe if indeed he had just taken a shower, well, with all the hair and the eyebrows being dry, that would give you a better idea because you see how it could make them look more prominent if they're darker, right? However, the reason they chose this picture is clear, right? I think it doesn't even need explaining as to why they included this picture. They're saying it so that they can show the eyebrows. They could have put this under seal. This was, again, the state putting this out there for the public, right? And again, it's a distraction. Like what, you know, when I asked you guys, what is everybody talking about in mainstream media? I didn't know about this picture. I thought y'all were going to say the knife sheath or the Amazon, you know, knife stuff. But you guys in the chat said this picture. And so I would say that what they're probably talking about is both. But you know what they're not talking about? They're not talking about, that I've seen anyway, they're not talking about all of the other text messages, phone calls, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, Yik Yak, all the rest. I've not seen it, and that doesn't mean it's not out there. I've not seen anything from like the regular mainstream media, you know, what comes up on YouTube. I've not seen anything about that. It's only the knife, and I guess maybe this picture, but I've just not seen that. So when you think about the strategy here, and with these filings being less likely to be sealed than they used to be, again, the strategy is changing because now the state and the defense are going to be using these to get information out to the public to, you know, impact the narrative. And I just want to point out, it sucks. And I hate that the states, their strategy worked, right? Because they put the picture out, because they put the Amazon knife thing out, nobody's talking about the text messages and the phone, all the other stuff that we learned in the defense filing, right? Candace says, coming from a fat family of caterpillar eyebrows, his are not bushy. Thank you so much for your weighing in on that. Yeah, but do you guys see what I mean though? Like it sucks. So it'll be interesting to see in the next slew of defense filings what they will bring out, right? Because now they're going to probably, if I were them, I would want to hit back with something else. And then there's the picture, there's the picture on the license. They're including this because of the height Oh, there's the, now this is exactly my point. This is exactly my point. Hold on. Let me see if I can do this while I'm live. This is exactly my point. Let me do this. Has anyone, okay, hold on. Give me a second. I'm going to, let me do this real quick. What I'm going to do, guys, is I'm going to take this and I'm going to flip it, put the thing down, flip it and reverse it. And I'm going to put it side by side so you can see the difference, potentially if somebody's hair and / eyebrows are wet, the difference that it makes in how they look. So hold on just 1 second. Okay, so let me edit this. I'm just, when I say edit, I'm just going to rotate it. Hold on. I'm not doing anything to it. I'm just going to rotate it horizontally. Give me just a second. There it is. Okay, I'm going to crop it and rotate it. Almost done. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Okay, okay, okay. And then I'm going to flip it. Excellent. There we go. All right, cool. So now let me do this. All right, I'm going to share this to you guys. And you guys will be like, wow, that was worth like the 10 seconds or 20 seconds or whatever it was. Hold on. You guys will see. You guys will see. This is why I did this. Okay, here. Right there. So take a look at those eyebrows. See the difference? They look way less prominent. They're less obvious. I'm going to have to unshare, reshare, but I'm going to go back then to the other picture. You see what I mean? So to the whole point of like, if eyebrows are dry, it's different. So in other words, and why does that matter? Because presumably, like, okay, it's the state trying to show something where his eyebrows, specifically to him, would look potentially the most prominent that they could, right? That's what I'm saying. If that makes sense to you guys, right? They're not offering, like they didn't offer this picture to try to say, here's what his eyebrows look like. They offered this for the height. They offered the other picture for the eyebrows. That's the point that I'm trying to make here, if that makes sense. So now, see the difference? See the difference? He's an organ donor. Oh, thank you for noticing that. Yeah, he does look different. Yeah. That's hilarious. Like to pull a Lori Vallow there. Official forgot to eat his waffles. Make sure you eat your waffles. Yeah. So, and the lighting makes a difference too, right? But let's just remember it was dark, right? There's that. And they're dark. Like, dude, yeah. So there you go. Okay, so are you guys down to get into some DNA stuff? Let's just see here what we got. Okay, so this is Rylene Nowlin's affidavit. I'll probably read this one and then we'll probably save the rest of the DNA documents for another live stream because there's a lot of them. And, sometimes it's hard to tell how long, we took a little bit of a deep dive with the Barnhardt people, right? Which I think was well worth it, but I might save those for the next live stream. But let's take a look here at Rylene Nowlin's affidavit. So She's old enough to be doing this. Great. She's been employed. Okay, we don't need all that. Okay, there is not a consensus in the forensic DNA community that DNA lab analysts should not opine about DNA transfer, persistence, prevalence, and recovery. Although the recommendation was included in the NIST report titled Forensic DNA Interpretation and Human Factors, Improving Practice Through a Systems Approach, published in May of 2024, there were 2 members of the working group who dissented from that recommendation. As a result, the recommendation was marked with an asterisk, and a footnote documenting the non-consensus was included in the report. In addition, the report was published as a final draft and was never posted as a working draft to the wider community for public comment. There is a divide in the forensic DNA community on this topic. Well, that's interesting, isn't it? One side supports the NIST report's recommendation. The other side believes that not offering an opinion based on knowledge of molecular biology/DNA when it may aid the trier of fact is unethical. At the most recent American Academy of Forensic Sciences meeting held in Baltimore in February of 2025, there were presentations supporting both sides of this argument, demonstrating the current divide in the community. The phrase touch DNA is widely used in the forensic community and was used in Dr. Ruth Ballard's expert witness disclosure for this case. Now, we looked her up. Ruthie Ballard. Y'all, that was hilarious, that live stream. She is, for anyone who didn't see that, she like writes children's books, and there's a whole lot about her. There was also a video of her that we also watched of her talking about using books for children to talk about science, and it was a whole thing. So Ruth Ballard's expert witness disclosure for this case, when referring to the DNA on the knife sheath, it is typically used to describe DNA collected from items of evidence in areas on the item that would most likely be touched by the user of that item. The term trace DNA implies amount. So they're saying there's a difference between trace and touch, or she's saying rather. The word trace is defined as a very small amount and is used in the scientific literature when describing evidence samples with low amounts of DNA that do not yield a profile or only a partial profile. I would not be willing to use that term, and it would be inappropriate to apply that term to the DNA on the knife sheath because a trace amount of DNA is not what was detected on item 1.1, the knife sheath. And referring to it as trace DNA would be misleading to the trier of fact. So I'm going to try to summarize her point here. She's saying that, okay, when making this distinction, right, because we hear them used sometimes interchangeably, and it sounds like it depends on who you ask as to what you will call it. And that's part of the issue, right? There's a divide. So touch DNA and trace, she's saying, in her view, trace is the amount. So whether it's touch or not touch or whatever the fuck, it's about, the point being that she's saying is it's a no profile or a partial profile. And so because of that, because it was not a partial profile, she would not categorize it as trace. I think that's fair. I think that it makes sense if you're going to make a distinction of what trace is, that kind of makes sense. But let me know. What is, and Frank's, by the way, for anyone who doesn't know, Frank's actually is getting into all this with a program, I believe starting this summer, right, Frank's? What is LCN data? Yes, Luigi's eyebrows. I agree. His eyebrows definitely are thicker, I would say. I agree with that. So I don't know what LCN means, but I'll read this again because this is important. Oh, low copy number. Right. Of course, duh. Right. She's not saying that specifically. The term trace DNA applies amount. The word trace is defined as a very small amount and is used in the scientific literature when describing evidence samples with low amounts of DNA. I mean, would you say that's the same as low copy number, Franks, or anyone else in the chat? Low amounts. I mean, she doesn't say low copy number, but she's low amounts of DNA. I mean, is this her way of getting around using the term? Could be. Is she weaseling? Could be. Low amounts of DNA. Yeah, because, there is a difference, right? It's like you could have a lot of DNA, but, it doesn't really, this is where it gets tricky, right? Like, you could get a full profile with a small sample, or you could have a large sample of DNA, but it doesn't yield anything, right? So it's not specific. And I wonder if that's, I don't know. When describing evidence samples with low amounts of DNA that do not yield a profile or a partial profile. Yeah, see, I feel like that's kind of two different things that she's rolling into one, maybe. I would say that the difference, again, for me, trace makes sense if it's the partial profile, maybe. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. I would not be willing to use that term, and it would be inappropriate to apply that term to the DNA on the knife sheath because a trace amount of DNA is not what I detected on item 1.1. and referring to it as trace DNA would be misleading to the trier of fact. Let's pull up real quick what the defense said about this to see how they outlined it. I'm just going to see which one it was because, okay, that's the statistical analysis. No, it's not the statistical analysis. It's a different one. Here it is. Found it. Got it. Okay. Here it is. Okay, we're just going to look for the part because we've already covered all this. I'm just looking for the part. Let me do this. Control F. See, now they're talking about touch and transfer, or sorry, touch, contact, transfer, but are they talking about trace? Okay, here's where trace is. Okay, the authors introduced the concept of trace DNA, defined DNA that cannot yet be attributed to an identifiable body fluid. Using a less descriptive term, such as trace DNA, is a more appropriate term to be used in casework when the source and mode of deposition are unknown. Okay, so this is how they're saying you should be using trace DNA. When the source and mode of deposition are unknown, you should say it's trace. Let's see what the other thing says here. Okay, that's just from that footnote. So the point, here's what they're saying. So we went through this document before, but because they don't really know how it got there, right? Because it's like, is it direct contact? Is it indirect? Whatever the case may be, that we don't know how it got there. And then there's some, again, some people, it seems like they're fighting over it, the community, right? But there's some folks in the community who say that if you don't know how the deposition, right? The source and mode of deposition, then you should call it trace. Now, the thing is, again, that Rylene Nowlin, where'd she go? Is saying it has to do with low amounts of DNA that do not yield a profile or only a partial profile. So they're defining it completely differently. That's what I'm taking away from this. What do you guys think? Okay, you think it's the same thing. Okay. They're trying to make trace into touch. So when you say they, Franks, which they? Because I was just going back. It's my fault. I was going back and forth between the different documents. So I'm not sure who's making trace into touch. Twiz is back with one word, semen. Classic. So Franks, are you saying you think that again, the trace DNA, this is accurate, right? That it's implying the amount? I mean, that makes sense again, logically. I do think, though, I will say this much, though. I do think that one thing that is real, like when we went through this before, that I think is really important is touch and contact, because I think they made a distinction in here as well, right? That in other words, it doesn't mean the person actually touched the thing, right? And that the terms can be misleading. I think it's in here. Let's see. Yeah, the terms touch and contact DNA came into use as the forensic community shifted from the testing of obvious identifiable stains, such as blood or semen, to samples that cannot be identified via a biological test based on the increasing sensitivity of DNA tests. Samples, they left off the S, such as swabs from steering wheels of a carjacked vehicle or window jams in a burglary were conducted and tested on the theory that a person would have in contact with would have had, it's again typos here, would have had contact with the object and left DNA behind in the form of skin or other cells, hence the term touch or contact. And then we get to the mechanism. But then it says the conclusion that it is impossible to determine how a particular deposit of DNA came to be on an object. Full DNA profiles can be recovered from items that have been touched, that have not been touched, but have been in the vicinity of someone speaking or coughing. Right, and then right here, it is not possible to use the amount of DNA recovered from an item of interest to inform whether the DNA was deposited by direct contact or indirect transfer. I think that's a huge thing to make, but no way that they can make that distinct. Like, okay, I don't think there's any way, at least at this point, but maybe ever, that they could know which type it was, right? Because there's so many variables, but I think that that's an important thing to make clear to the jury. Right. So impossible to know whether from the quality of DNA profile obtained, whether the DNA was deposited by direct contact or indirect transfer. Yeah. And we looked at this before. They have a whole visual of like, there's like the different levels of transfer, like primary, secondary, tertiary. And it's like, whoa. Which thing is one and the same, Franks? Trace and touch, you're saying? I think this is an accurate way to put it. Thank you for this. Truth and crime, truth and justice, true crime with Andy. Trace DNA is a more general term that encompasses all types of DNA found in small quantities, including DNA left behind through contact. That is how I'm not a DNA, y'all know, I'm a squirrel. But my interpretation of what we've been reading here is that is it. That that is my understanding that I'm gleaning from this. And that is very well said. Thank you for that. I would agree with that from what we're seeing here. And again, we have to keep in mind that everybody, both the defense and the state, have said there's a divide in the community over how to define these things. So we have to keep that in mind, right? That, and you know, it's, right. Well, touch DNA specifically refers to DNA transfer through skin contact. That I would actually push back on. Not that that's your fault. I know you Googled it, but because again, it could be direct or indirect transfer. That's where it gets tricky, right? Like for example, I touch somebody and then I touch another thing and then I transfer their DNA onto the other thing, right? It's touch DNA, but it's indirect transfer. They can't differentiate between the two, I think. Yeah, I mean, like, look at this. This review was followed by a similar review article by a group, oh my God, a different group of scientists 6 years later, which reached similar conclusions. Right, the term activity level refers to the question of the when and how of what happened. Such as how did the DNA come to be on an object? How long had it been there? Right. This is like what I was saying, right? The term touch DNA can be misleading as it implies a specific mode of action. Like I could see how without being informed, otherwise you could think of touch DNA as automatically being direct, as in the person touched the thing and left their DNA. And the point being that there's the indirect transfer and that you can have the primary, secondary. Let me see if I can find those pictures here. Ah, there it is right there. Bam. There we go. So direct, this is the thing. So with touch DNA, guys, right? So you've got direct deposition. That's the primary transfer, right? Then you have the indirect, so that's secondary. But then you can have the multi-step. And then you can have the simultaneous direct and indirect, like via a hand. Then bidirectional transfer, multiple contacts. And then for perhaps the most, look at this shit, interrupted pathway. Interrupted pathway with recollection. I'm not the one to understand this and explain this to you guys, but what I'm saying is clearly it's not so simple as if there's touch DNA, it means the person touched the thing. That's what I'm gleaning from this. I don't think they have any way of knowing that it was skin cells. Let me know what else you guys remember. I feel like that might be what people said, potentially mainstream media. I will say this much. I can tell you for a fact that in none of these court filings have they ever said skin cells. I don't think it's been in any of the hearings. Like, I don't think those words have come out of anybody's mouths related to the DNA that they have here in this case. Now, maybe when they're talking about it, like in the DNA hearing back in August of whatever year that was, they might have talked about how DNA works. They might have mentioned skin cells, but not in terms of with this particular DNA that they have in this case. There's no reference of skin cells, but I do think that in the media, when they're trying to describe touch DNA to people on the knife sheath, they usually use that. That might be that's my understanding of what is going on. Of it. So, but again, like it said on one of the things, they can't tell you exactly what it's from, it looks like, right? Contrary to like blood or semen or whatever. Touch DNA. I mean, I feel like though they said something different. Hold on. Oh, maybe I got it confused with this part with the trace. Oh, God, too many T words. Trace DNA defined DNA that cannot yet be attributed to an identifiable body fluid. Let me do this. Skin cells is not in this document at all. So remember when I said I don't recall anybody using the term skin cells in this shit? Like, that's a 0 for 0, right? So interesting. Yeah, so maybe it was the news. It might have been the news. Like in terms of them saying in this case, like I don't think that they've said for sure what it is. I've seen touch, I've seen contact, I've seen trace, but I've not seen them say in any of these documents, including in the hearing, right, that they unsealed that transcript. I've not seen anybody say that in this case it is skin cells. I don't think. What we could do is I could do this not like on my own time. Like I could go back and Control F myself with all the documents for DNA and see if it is in anything. But I don't recall it being said like that this is skin cells. I don't think it was in the PCA either. Although again, I wouldn't, that's not where I would even go to look because there's been so many other documents regarding the DNA that are way more reliable and up to date with what new evidence is and everything else that I would, and more discovery that's, like if they're going to be talking about it, right? Like all the, the motions to suppress and the motions in limine, that's where you would, probably get the best information and be the most likely to see it, right? Because things are getting more and more specific as they go along with these filings, right, guys? So here's what we're going to have to do. We're going to have to leave the rest of the DNA documents for another live stream because I do have to go and teach some lessons. But I will be back tonight. And what we're going to do tonight is we're going to do the latest. It won't be long. It'll be a shorter live stream with the latest filings for Donna Adelson. We'll do that. And then that will redirect y'all into probably a Murdoch live stream. And then we will be back tomorrow for more BK and all the rest of the DNA docs. And yeah. And then maybe potentially we might also cover the one, what was it? The one, self-authentication of records. We might do that one too. We'll see what else we can get done in there, but we'll definitely do the rest of the DNA related things and then anything else extra we can do as well. And then after that, we will do another BK live stream covering all the death penalty shit that just came out. So you're very welcome. And too fast, I didn't even know you were here. If you were in the chat and I missed you, I'm sorry. Anyone else that I missed in the chat, I'm so sorry because it's harder to read the chat when I'm reading the documents. But I love all of you guys so much. You all are all the best. You do not, it is okay. Everybody is wrong all the time, right? We are just doing our best to try to make sense of this. And you do nothing to apologize for. I appreciate everyone's humility and open-mindedness and participating and helping everybody out with everything, our powers combined, right? And then epithelial cells. I will also say that in the Casey Anthony trial, which I've been covering gavel to gavel, there was a really great touch DNA expert that testified in that. And it was a while ago that we watched that episode, but we did learn a lot about the epithelial cells in that one. I just can't recall at this juncture if he used the word trace. I think he was talking about touch. And like, he definitely talked about the direct and indirect. I don't know that he used the word trace though. So I don't know, it's interesting. So, but yeah, I love you guys. So he's been doing yard work while listening. Awesome. Hopefully you are doing well with that. I hope everything goes well with your faulty stool and that you don't fall over. Hopefully you have some nice rat babies today that you can pet and give a little scritchy scratch on the head. But yeah, but other than that, we will be back later for more. And I'm glad you found us too. And anyone else who's new also, right? I'm glad you enjoyed it. Glad that you found us and that we found you and everybody else who's new. Y'all are awesome. I love you guys. And Squirrel Crew is the best. Y'all are make everything great that we do here. It's the Squirrel Crew. So, but with that, I love you guys and I'll see y'all next time.